brothers of the Serpent, Kyle and Russ. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Graham, Darren.
How's it going, guys?
Pleasure to be here.
Kyle's kind of quiet.
I think your mic's a little quiet there, Kyle.
Yeah, well,
there it is.
No, you're back. You're back.
I have a mute button and I pushed it by accident.
He panicked.
Going pro, guys. The word on the streets is I'm going professional.
We're professionals.
Well, you got to combine 1,000 podcasts between us, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, one day there will be zero mistakes.
Oh, we're looking forward to this because you guys presented this in front of our, our crowd at Contact in the Canyons in Utah.
That's right.
It was a hit. Everybody loved it, and I really loved it. I think you guys are onto something here, so we're looking forward to seeing this.
Yeah, it's thank you. It was a lot of fun. I've been kind of Kyle and I've been talking about this topic for a while, back and forth. We've done a couple of podcasts that have sort of gone through some of these concepts, and then of course we are always hanging out, so we're discussing possibilities on this particular thing. Which basically the concept here, there's two main things we're looking at. One is the fact that there are unfinished jobs of an anomalous kind. Like the work itself is anomalous in the sense of perhaps moving enormous blocks or precision, and even the method of the stone cutting that we see. And then the other thing, of course, is the tool marks in particular that are also associated with a lot of these unfinished sites. So the presentation itself kind of goes through those two things, but the main thrust here is that at some point it looks like all over the world people were doing they were engaged in almost unbelievably enormous construction projects using megalithic stones and a method of moving and cutting those stones that is not really clear exactly how they were doing it. And then in the middle of the job they put their tools down and seem to just never come back because a lot of the jobs are unfinished. A lot of them seem to be in the final stages, but it's just not complete.
All over the world?
All over the world, yeah. So at the end of the presentation, I'll show you. Most of this is focused on Egypt, but at the end of the presentation, I'll give a couple of places from around the world where you also see these things. So yeah, it's unfinished and also anomalous tool marks itself. So
that makes me think of the guy who's building the ark, and they're like, they're done, they're finishing up, but the waves coming, and they're like, get in the fucking boat, Rudy, let's go. And
that's right, yeah.
Then the tools get washed away.
The tools get washed away, and that part of the ark doesn't get sanded. Right?
Exactly, because then they just find this messed up part of the ark, and it's like, what's
that from?
Yeah, well, it's because Rudy didn't finish sanding that.
What's that from?
Well, I just made that up.
We're just making it up.
Oh, okay. I thought it's like a scene from a movie or something.
No, we're making it up as we go.
Yeah, this is it. It could be.
Perhaps the implication is that there was a global cataclysm that stopped all of this work because and we're not saying that for sure. It's like this is looking at all of the different down tool situations. But it is suggestive, Why does it look the same in all these places throughout the world? So
yeah,
I was kind of going to ask that question, this main question later on. But I mean, I might as well just tease it now, and we can, once we go through all the slides, we can kind of talk about it. But do you think there's a way to even just speculate that a lot of these examples that you have are from a similar time frame? Like going way back, or an unknown time frame even, or like maybe just not a known time frame?
Yeah, it does seem like you could do that. It would be speculation. It's hard to say for certain, but again, around the world you see similar construction styles, and I'm sure some people who have looked at like ancient sites around the world, they'll be familiar with the kind of, there's this heterogeneous dry laid cyclopean kind of stone masonry where all the blocks are huge and they're all different shapes and sizes, and there's no mortar, and they're very smooth, and it's like you see that all over the world. And these seem to be they're usually at the bottoms of the constructions we're looking at. So like up above them, you see less well done masonry. In other words, newer repair jobs that are less sophisticated. right? So we're going to be looking at some of that in Egypt, but there are similar styles around the world, and they do seem to be at the deepest parts of these structures, and so it does imply that we may be looking at something very ancient, perhaps deeply ancient, to the point of being anomalous, in terms of the standard model of history.
And when it comes to the tool marks as well, they're so similar that it's like, is this a dating method where you can say, well, it looks like they're using the same tools, so they must be contemporary. It's a possibility. That's what it seems like to me, but it's possible that they could also be separated, in time, but they look like they're using the same tools, the same methods. So it is suggestive again.
So let me go ahead and get the share going here. We'll start this.
And we'll be able to see all this stuff firsthand in November. Pretty much everything in here.
That's right. All these sites, at least the Egypt ones, we're going to be looking at when we go to Egypt for sure. So we're going to start here at Giza. Now this is just, I got some Google Earth images to show. So this is a, north-facing image. Most people will recognize this is the 3 pyramids on Giza. These are the most popular pyramids in Egypt. The Great Pyramid is the one on the upper right. The center one is, the median pyramid or Khafre, as it's called. But the one we're going to be focusing on for the beginning of this presentation is on the lower left there, the small one. This is the least popular pyramid on the popular pyramids of Giza. This is Menkaure. It's the small pyramid that's sort of offset there. So this is us walking up to the north face of it. So if you look at this image here, you can see this is where the buses park, and then there's this path and then this walkway. So this picture is taken from on this walkway here. So another thing you'll notice when you're going through Egypt is you have to learn to see through the cultural layers. And this is important as we go through a lot of these slides. For example, this walkway is modern. It's sort of made to look ancient. It's made of flagstones of the same material that a lot of this stuff out here is built of. This right here, some of it may be modern, but other parts of it may be, I don't know, it may be ancient, could be New Kingdom, don't know. But then you can see the repair work on top of it here. Right. And so there's always there are these layers of stuff you're looking through. And then, of course, now we're looking at the pyramid in the back itself. So the interesting thing about the reason I wanted to go to this pyramid, when we were here, I was telling Ben, because he was saying, we got a couple of possibilities for where we might go when we're at Giza here. And I was like, I really want to get over to Menkaure. I want to see this pyramid. And it's specifically because of these casing stones. So that's these here, these stones here. Not many of them are left. But there are quite a few comparatively. The Great Pyramid itself has almost no casing stones remaining. Like they're almost all gone. There's a few down at the ground, and it's not really clear that those are in their original position. The center pyramid, or the Khafre pyramid, has more than the Great Pyramid, but it also, all of its casing stones are almost completely gone. So Menkaure here has the most casing stones of the 3 Giza pyramids left. The Bent Pyramid, actually, which is in a different place, has the most casing stones remaining of all the pyramids in Egypt. And it's amazing to see that thing, because there's enough of the casing stones left where you can see how precise they were. I mean, the lines are so sharp. It's unbelievable. So it kind of, going to see the Bent Pyramid, which we will do when we go in Egypt in November, it's really awesome, because that gives you it kind of allows you to see these pyramids and sort of picture what they must have looked like in their prime. And again, who knows how far back that was. But so a couple of things about the casing. And I did mention this when we were doing the presentation, but this is the casing stones act like the roof for the pyramid. If you think of any house or any building, it's got to have a roof that is more impervious to the elements. So, a common thing is shingles people put on the roofs of their houses. And shingles are like a fabric with a tar, and embedded into the tar is like gravel, right? And that protects the rest of the house from rain and ice and sun and wind, okay? because the interior parts of the house or the rest of the house, the structure is built out of things like wood and plaster and things like that would fall apart if they were completely exposed to the elements all the time. So these casing stones here, they act as the roof of the structure, and also the other pyramids, the Great Pyramid and all the rest of them in Egypt, they had casing, and those casings acted as the roof to protect the core masonry, which is this stuff back here. This is the core masonry. This is what the bulk of the pyramid is made out of. This stone is just regular limestone, and it's much more susceptible to being eroded by rain and wind-blown sand, ice, freeze and thaw, which, can happen out here in the desert. Freeze and thaw and rain, but mostly wind-blown sand is very destructive to this kind of stone. Whereas this roof material, or these casing stones, this is made out of granite. The same kind of granite that we put on top of our houses. So it's very, very hard stone. And the difference is that the limestone is sedimentary, so it's laid down at the bottoms of oceans or shallow seas, whereas the granite is igneous. So it's formed deep under the ground from slowly cooling lava under a great pressure. So it results in just a much harder stone. And it's very, very strong against elemental forces. But, of course, most of it's been removed. And you can see, as I back out here, you can see these piles of rubble around here and over here. This is all remnants of casing stones that used to be on this pyramid, but were quarried over time off of this pyramid as a source of granite for people nearby. So they treated people who lived here for thousands of years treated these big structures as quarries, like convenient quarries, because the source of this granite is 500 miles up the Nile down south, very far away. So if you want a millstone made out of a nice hard granite, rather than having to travel 500 miles down the Nile or up the Nile to get it, you can just come over to this pyramid, peel one of these stones off there, roll it down the side, get it on the ground, and then carve yourself a millstone out of it. And there's actually an incomplete one we'll see when we go around the corner of the pyramid here. But yeah, people were quarrying these pyramids for material for thousands of years.
Is that where they bashed a hole in the side of it?
Yeah, this is actually a tomb robbing attempt. No, that's the story. That what's interesting, see this is the entrance. And this is what we're going to be focusing on here in a minute. But this is the entrance. This is the only known entrance to this pyramid. And when you go up these steps, it basically goes straight down into the ground. Right? And the passages are all down under the ground here. So in other words, people who got in here were like, well, where are the rooms up in this structure up here? Right? So they didn't believe that these were the only rooms down here. So they started digging their way into the side of the pyramid to find the secret hidden stuff.
That is an insane amount of work.
Yeah.
That hole right there would have been so much work.
Yes.
To
a lot of work.
Excavate that.
That's right. No, as far as I know, they didn't find anything. There's no known rooms up in the body of that pyramid. It's weird. The Great Pyramid has known chambers and shafts and channels and passageways up in the body of it. But again, most of the interior parts of that above ground structure, the Great Pyramid, is it's empty of known chambers. And a lot of it goes down underground. And we did go into Khafre, the second pyramid, and it's all underground. Like basically, you go in, you go down a shaft, and then you're in the bedrock for most of the time. And you're just like, what is this giant triangle above the ground for? If this is just a tunnel going under the bedrock, like what's the point? So it's very strange.
Yeah. Now the Bent Pyramid had more chambers up inside the structure.
That's right. But even all of those were below the bend. Which is like,
yeah, that was interesting too.
It's like you climb way up inside this thing, and then you see this tunnel going up and out, and you realize that exits on a tiny hole on the outside of the bent pyramid that's way below the bend of it. So you're just like, okay, still most of this thing has no known chambers. So anyway, let's move forward here because what we want to focus on is this part of this stone, and the reason these were protected. Actually, is because, or at least we were told this by the tour guides and by Yusuf, is that the quarrying of the higher stone, the granite up here, made such big piles of rubble down at the bottom that all of these casing stones were actually protected by the quarrying rubble.
And probably sand.
And buried in sand, and yes. So people didn't bother to dig them out, and so that's why they still exist. Right. So
Are
this
they
is
all
just,
attached underground, those pyramids?
Yeah, they're socketed into the bedrock.
Into the bedrock, yeah.
Yeah.
So can you like go down the Great Pyramid and come out in this one?
Oh, are they attached together? That's no, not that I know of. I mean, there are legends that they are.
Or at least that there's a gigantic tunnel system underneath all this stuff. So
yeah.
They're attached to Scotland, Darren.
That's right.
Well, it just makes me wonder if that's the very tip of it. You know, that's just you're up in the attic. That's why you can't find no shit up there. You know, it's all just under there.
That's where you keep the dusty furniture.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just all below there. All this like goes down 100 feet or 200 feet. You know.
Yeah.
Well, they have excavated some of the corners of multiple pyramids, and in the past, the corners had been excavated by Petrie and others. So they'll dig down through the rubble and through the sand and find the actual bedrock and that actual corner block that is socketed into the bedrock. So if there's no more construction any further down than that, it would be tunneling.
Yeah,
but they're straight up socketed, and you can see a few of them. There's one at the Bent Pyramid. I don't know if this one has a cleared corner, but it's really interesting. Even the casing stones are missing,
and the core blocks are gone.
Yeah, so you're far away from the pyramid because there would have been a lot more stones out of the wall, and you can see the corner where they cut into the bedrock to make this corner where that corner block would have sat.
Yeah, so it kind of sockets the entire structure onto the bedrock. You know what I mean? There's either an indent or an extrusion, so the pyramid sits down on it like it's socketed in. It's really interesting. So this picture, I just as people are watching this, just start to pay attention to the shapes of the stones, and you're gonna start to recognize this style. This is the kind of heterogeneous sort of cyclopean, or megalithic masonry that I was talking about. Now, because of what they were doing here, and they were actually matching these casing stones to the courses of the core masonry here. So each course is, one of these layers of stones, and they were matching the casing stones to each layer as well. It's not nearly as sort of flowing and heterogeneous as the stuff you'll see in Peru, but it has a similar effect.
In other words, the lateral lines are all pretty straight.
That's right. These horizontal lines, are like they're regular. But you'll notice that the shapes of the blocks, the tilts, like this one, see how this one's got a nice slant to it here, and they chose to put two small ones here, and then there's a giant block right here to this side. And then notice how they're kind of what we call pillowy. The faces of these are not finished flat. They're very irregular. And then also you'll begin to notice this too, these nubs all over these blocks here. And I think a lot of these have been cut off or they've been sheared off or whatever. And that may be, who knows, that could be damage over time. It's not clear. But there's nubs, and then you'll see some of them have reverse or sockets. This one has two right here. You can kind of see right there.
Forklift grabbed it.
Yeah, forklift. This is showing you scale too. And like you'll see this interesting scooping pattern on a lot of these. There's one, here's one here. There's one there, this right here, and then there's one there, and then on the other side of the block, one here. We're going to be looking at those more in the future.
We'll see that in the quarry, right?
That's right, and elsewhere. But it just shows like that they seem to have been using some tool that was able to take. It looks like it was able to take large amounts of stone, large amounts of material out of the stone by kind of doing this scraping or scooping maneuver. I don't know exactly how it worked. Again, notice the rubble and then the scale of these blocks.
You can see the rubble's totally piled up against it there.
Yeah, it's all at the corner there. So here, what we're going to be looking at here is this section here. This is what I was interested in. This is why I asked Ben if we could come over to this to look at this pyramid because I wanted to see this flattened area here. And again, keep in mind that I'm mostly looking up at this because of the angle of the pyramid. Here's another interesting block down at the ground level. 2 nubs. Those look like they've been cut off. Because in some places in Egypt, you'll see these things and they'll extrude 10, 12 inches. You know, not really clear what they were for. Maybe for lifting. Don't know. Maybe for adjusting after they get it in place. Not sure. Here's another spot where the block has been cut out. Here's a couple of indents, notches. There's a better view of it. And again, notice how rough the faces of these blocks are. But still, they're finely fitted to each other, right? So the front faces are extremely rough. Look at this. Look at that interesting pattern right there. Every time I look at these pictures, I see something new and different. But if you look up here at these blocks, let's see if I can zoom in on this. You'll notice that the sides here, that they were very flat and finely faced to fit against each other. These 2 blocks probably went together, and they've just been separated for whatever reason. Or maybe there was another block that's supposed to be between them that's gone now. But the point is that the sides are very flat. Or if they're not flat, they're tuned perfectly to fit against the blocks that they were supposed to sit against, as opposed to these front faces, which are very rough. That's
perfectly flat. The lines are perfectly flat, too.
Yeah.
So the bottoms and the tops are perfectly flat.
Yeah, well, it's like the mating faces on the sides of the rock, whether they were curved or flat, they match each other perfectly, like a jigsaw puzzle. So they had the capability to make flat edges like that, but they intentionally left the front faces completely rough.
You can see how really finely faced this side of the block and this side of the block is, even though it's irregular, right? It's clearly not like cubical, but those faces are designed to fit against whatever they were supposed to sit against over here. Whether it was this block or another one that was supposed to be between them is not clear because, again, I took this picture trying to see, like, I do think that this one looks like it was supposed to sit against that one. But, you know, it's not, we don't know. These are just sitting up there, and you're not allowed to climb up there and look either. So,
but it makes you wonder if it wasn't for a functional reason after the fact, it must have had to been really easy. Otherwise, it seems ridiculous that you would put that much time into non-standardized building.
Yeah, it does. It looks like whoever was doing this, they were very good at it, right? They were incredibly good at it, and they totally knew what they were doing. And again, I think that the faces of these blocks here, the fact that they're all pillowy and rounded and rough, means that this job wasn't finished. And we'll see why in a minute here. I also want to point out this spot here. I think I have another picture that looks at this closer. If I can make this. No. Let's just go to the next picture. There it is. Right here, you can see this face. And look at this fit here. I'm not sure what we're looking at here. The
one on the left is limestone, right?
Yes, this is limestone. This is core masonry. Yeah. So it's weird because I'm just not sure what exactly is going on here. Where does this block end and this one start? Is this block socketed into the core masonry here? I'm not sure. And I don't know if this is mortar or not. Again, you're not allowed to climb up there, so it's hard to tell. But look at the irregularity of this joint. You know, this is
like you're melted together in a way. I mean, how would you wouldn't want to manually do that? I mean,
yeah, well, it could be many things, but one of the things that we've debated, Kyle and Ben and I have all talked about, Ben from Uncharted X, we've talked about this multiple times, is the casing actually a second stage of construction? In other words, this may indicate by the irregularity of this limestone here that the casing was put on there when the limestone of the core masonry was already old and being eroded. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, and they were just adding it on. It almost looks like grout.
Yeah. The idea is that, well, the question is it possible that the pyramids were already old when the people with the capability to cut this granite the way they could and manipulate it so easily came along and decided to preserve these artifacts?
Or to brighten it up, or to make it more aesthetically pleasing, or whatever.
Yeah. And the reason why this is even, I mean, it's not just speculation just from this, because the rest of Giza has a lot of this on it too. The Valley Temple, for example, we'll look at some of that. The Valley Temple already, its core masonry was already exceedingly old when somebody came and put a bunch of granite around the outside and the inside. And you can tell that that's the case because they fit the granite to the eroded faces of the limestone core masonry of the Valley Temple. In other words, the erosion of the core masonry was already there when somebody came and cased it in granite. So it's possible that they did this too. It's just, I just don't know. It seems to me like, as a builder, again, all that stuff I said about roofs, this pyramid needed a roof, you know? And if you came and put all those core blocks up, you would want to case it in something that would protect it. So I don't know.
You might have to redo that every couple of years. Maybe it just started off really small, and they just every couple of years they had to redo it.
Could be.
Next thing you know, the thing's fucking 300 feet tall.
Yeah, but it seems also that they had a ground plan.
Yeah.
In the beginning, like they knew how big the floor plan was going to be.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And that's just, I'm saying that based on what I've read from Petrie, who basically initially excavated around these pyramids in the modern age.
Yeah.
Well, if they're socked into the bedrock too, that doesn't make sense. So.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So this is the main part we want to look at here, and this is around the entrance. So again, this is the doorway, and this is, you know, like a modern wooden walkway that goes down into the entrance of the pyramid. But there's this interesting square flattened part of the casing stones where whoever was doing this came along, and for whatever reason they decided that they needed the area around the door to be flat, not all puffy and pillowy like the rest of the blocks are. So they just had some machine, I guess. It seems like a machine to me, because you can kind of see this radius, and it actually goes all the way down to the ground here. So it goes out of the picture. But there's this radius at the edge of the square part where, like, and again, it's hard to see the scale here, but they were removing 12, sometimes 14 inches of stone. And again, keep in mind, this is very hard granite, right? So this is not easy to work. And somebody just came along and, like, it looks like a giant belt sander just flattened this, but it's got this, you know, this is where the edge of the belt sander was.
Yeah, I mean, and why would they leave if it wasn't easy? Why would they leave so much of that pillow exposed to flatten it? Right. I mean,
yeah, that's a lot of material to remove, right? So let's look more.
Hundreds of pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, hundreds of pounds of material. Again, so you can see the radius here, you know, and it seems to just continue up. It like follows this line, irrespective of where the blocks start or end. It looks like the tool itself was just, you know, it just didn't care where the blocks were. It just they wanted this line here. And again, so I'll just point out real quick. This is, you can see some really rough, faint glyphs here. In case anyone's interested, this basically amounts to 19th dynasty graffiti. Okay, even the standard model considers this pyramid to have been built in the 4th dynasty, or this is the old kingdom.
So what year is that? Like 2600 BC kind of thing?
Yeah, it's very old. Maybe Kyle can look it up. Don't ask me the dates, Graham.
Oh no, the dynasty and the date. I can't do the dynasties. I need the dates.
You did the same thing in Utah. I was like, yeah, it's and you're like, what is the date? And I'm like, I don't know, Graham. Don't ask me these questions.
Oh, sorry, I bugged you with a lot of bad questions.
No, it's okay. Kyle's looking it up. Yeah, so this is.
So the 4th dynasty lasted from 2613 to 2494 BC.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, right around there.
So it ended like, say, 2500 BC.
So when's 19th dynasty? New Kingdom.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. Probably 1,000 years later, at least. So you think of that. whoever wrote this on here, if the standard model of the timeline is correct, and this pyramid was built in the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom.
Yeah, so the 19th dynasty started in 1292 BC. So we had...
Yeah, so that's more than 1,000 years.
1,300
right?
years, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So think about that. Like, whoever wrote this, to them, if the standard model is correct, the pyramid was already at least 1,300 years old. And so, like, it would be like you doing some graffiti on a, on a 7th century cathedral or something.
Yeah.
In today's age.
Some graffiti.
Yeah. Graffiti.
And it looks like the other pyramids were probably completely flattened already.
Yeah, so that is a good point, Darren. Like, so I see that you've got the, a classic Giza picture behind you there. The other pyramids were flat. Yes, at least as far as we can tell, the remaining Tura limestone casing stones on those had been flattened to a high degree. They were like almost polished.
And before we move on to that, let's talk about why this area kind of makes sense around that door frame. You would flatten that. If you were sort of prepping the whole thing, you might want to flatten that area to put in lintels or to do whatever to face, so you can face that door frame properly afterwards. Right.
Right. So again, Petrie talks about the existence of these pivot stones or prism stones that used to be in the doorways of the entrances of these pyramids, and they were basically like a prism shape that were sort of socketed into the left and right side that could be lifted enough for a person to crawl through, but the weight would keep it,
on a pivot kind of, yeah,
on a pivot flat with the surface of the pyramid. So if you're trying to imagine, like, okay, we need to fit a stone that's going to be able to pivot. It's got to pivot where the top corner goes to the inside of the door. So you can't have a big pillowy surface on that rock if the top corner's got to go in. So we should
open up whiteboard on Zoom.
I know, I need a whiteboard. You would have to flatten. I can just tell you.
You're doing like sign language with your hands there.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain it. You would need to flatten that pillowy surface out in order to get the block to pivot correctly, or at least to take the proper measurements to know what you would have to have. So that was my thought. I mean,
you wouldn't be able to make that whole contraption until this was finished. I mean, so why would you wait for the whole thing to be done before you could finish off that whole entranceway, the doorway, whatever else? Yeah.
Right. Where this theory falls apart is that there's another flattened surface on the other side of the pyramid that apparently does not have a door.
On the east side. Yeah, we're going to look at that in a minute.
Does that thing have a door, and maybe we don't know about it, or it's
fuck, we did the wrong side. I thought the door was on that side.
God dang it, Johnson! I told you the door's on the north side.
That's a very good
fucking idiots.
So I don't. Yeah, he said it. Maybe the theory falls apart. I don't think so, because these can have multiple purposes.
But hey, even then it had to be easy, because there's no way they left Johnson there for 3 months before they were like, hey, bro, wrong side.
Wrong side. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You don't make that big of a mistake if you're doing it by hand.
The other thing I thought of with the flat sides is that they were getting a position with which
an angle, a datum for the angle.
That's right. To check their angles as they go up. Right, like this is what we need. This is the angle we need. The engineer comes out, he gets it cut, and it's measured, and this is right. And they do it on all sides, perhaps.
Yeah, you would want one on each side, so that you can check all the way up.
They can measure and make sure, because if you're going to leave pillowy surface on a rock, you would want to make sure that the full shape of that stone is it's protruding far enough to where when you do plane it off, there are no voids.
Like, in other words, if you look at this image here, imagine if in the pillowiness of this particular block before they've planed it down, there was a dip in it right here that made it so that when you planed it flat here, there was a gouge, right? In other words, there wasn't enough stone here.
And that might be why they need to go 12 inches high, so they make sure they get that minimum.
Yeah, but you also and you can also make this flat spot, set up some poles or whatever, and then run a line up the pyramid, and then you can always check
Like you're 14 inches in, make sure you can measure off of that line.
Yeah.
You don't need that huge flat surface for that, but
you don't. Yeah.
I don't know, man.
It's a large flat surface. So
it's strange.
Yeah.
We've been kicking around ideas about this.
This is one possibility. I mean, and it probably had many uses. You know, it could be so that you could get the door done right. It could also be so that you could check your angles. You know, and it could be other things. Maybe this is where they mounted the giant crane that sat over the entire thing, just grabbed the pyramid on all four sides at these flat spots here. I don't know.
UFO landing pad. I mean, it could be. It could have been like just an inspection too. I mean, they might have had to just say, "Hey, like before we finish doing this whole thing, or before we, grind the whole thing down, or whatever they're doing, they need to do an inspection on each side to make sure that who knows."
So here we're looking at the right side. Now we're on the other side of the door, and again, you can see this radius. Look how much material they removed from these pillowy blocks. That's a lot of material. And again,
what do the mainstream say about that?
They don't say anything.
They're silent about this.
Yeah. So look at this.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow, you got your pillowy rock here. It's just eroded. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the other thing I want to point out. I love this. Just look at this. Anybody who's a mason or has done any kind of construction will appreciate what this little joint here means. The fact that this block right here sits deeper into the one below it than this one does. You know, it's like we were just talking about. This must have been easy for them, like because this is unnecessarily difficult.
It might be structurally better.
It is, yeah, absolutely. If this is like a compromise for the fact. Remember, we were talking about how the horizontal lines of these courses basically follow the core masonry. Well, this seems to be a compromise to attain some kind of heterogeneity in the horizontal lines, even though they're basically following the cores. I just find this amazing.
Or they're just like, this is so easy that they stick the block up there and the other block they grind against each other until they mate perfectly.
Right, and they don't care if it goes around the corner like that. Yeah,
it's just like, that's great. It does it automatically.
Right.
What did you say before? You were like, this is sort of like a kind of, it's like the hubris of the stonemasons.
Yeah, it's a kind of masonry arrogance.
Yeah, just like, look at how freaking awesome
That's
we are.
Right. So again, this is just looking at the flat spaces here around this entrance. Now this is around the east side. So this is the flattened area around the corner to the east side of the pyramid. Again, you can see, look at all the rubble, right? This is all quarrying rubble that hasn't been removed. These are the pillowy. Look at this giant horizontal scoop taken out of this block.
You don't know that smooth. Oh yeah, and the other side there's rocks above it too, isn't there?
Yeah.
So so it wasn't like a ramp that went right to the top.
There's less of those on the other side, but yeah, I wonder. You could be right. It could be a ramp. But what I think about these two flattened areas is that this shows that they eventually intended to do this to the entire thing. That's my argument. Like that's my gut feeling, is that they were going to flatten, and the other pyramids were, like Darren said, flattened. So I think that they were going to do this to the rest of it, and they didn't finish the job.
Which drives you nuts, doesn't it?
It does make you think.
The thing that drives me nuts is that somebody came along and tore it apart.
Yeah, that's right.
That is one of the most maddening things about being in Egypt, is seeing
how much destruction of these amazing structures there is.
Yeah. And I mean, you're mad at people that have been dead for like 3,000 years. It's like, screw those guys.
Those guys are assholes. So here's a picture of some of the rubble, granite. This is granite rubble from the casing stones lying around the pyramid.
These are they're huge. They're monsters.
They're just unbelievably massive. And look at these beautiful flat surfaces on them. This is what the people who were quarrying them were after. If you think about it, if you're doing quarrying work, you've got to cut it out of the frickin' quarry, and then you've got to move it out of the quarry, and then you've got to shape it and flatten it and do all this work. Well, here at the pyramid is a source of stone where there's at least 2 and maybe 3 beautifully flattened faces on the stones already. If you can wedge it out of there and roll it down and then break a piece off, most of your work has been done for you. So they were just stealing the material or reusing it.
You can imagine some guy is like, his grinds, his millstone breaks. And I mean, you can come up with any scenario, but it's just like, dude, I gotta have a millstone.
Gotta have a millstone
right now.
Yeah.
And just the first guy just goes and gets one.
Yeah.
And it starts a trend that lasts for thousands of years. And
yep.
I bet you more, dude. You had some fucking gangsters that knocked a bunch of that shit down, and they stood out front of there and sold you that shit.
Sold it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They ran a racket for sure. I bet.
That's what I would do.
So we were looking at, that's what Darren would do. So we were looking at this area. Now we're going to go around the side, and you can see these are piles of rubble. All this stuff out here, all this here. This is just rubble around the bottom of the pyramid. But we're going to walk around the side here to the east face, and we're going to be looking at this structure and where it butts up against the bottom of the pyramid here. And this, they call this the Pyramid Temple of Menkaure, a mortuary temple, perhaps. The standard model or the mainstream archaeology treats this whole area as a giant necropolis. So these are tombs, and this is a mortuary temple. Okay, that's what they say. So this is what
in the alternative history crowd, we call this the small pyramid and the pyramid temple.
Yeah.
Instead of Menkaure, because that's a standard model story that the guy who built it for his tomb.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have the small pyramid, the middle pyramid, and the great pyramid.
Yeah. In
the alternative. And there's plenty of necropolis stuff around here, but a lot of that's way later. Intrusive burials, basically. So anyway, this is the and now you can see this again. We're looking at just a kind of megalithic masonry that just people don't. I don't know. You just don't think of doing stuff this way anymore. It's not nearly as well done as the stuff we were looking at on the pyramid, but you can still see the enormity of these blocks. Now, these are limestone. They're not nearly as hard, again, as the granite, okay? And they're not as well done. The fitting isn't as well done, but it's still amazing. And then you can see how deeply eroded these top blocks are of this temple. And you can even see it out here and around at the back of the back walls out here, just how much degrading or erosion has happened to these blocks. And it's probably because these have been exposed for most of the time, whereas the rest of this was probably buried in sand. This big groove right here, we saw lots of these in different places in Egypt. So this big groove along here may indicate a sand layer. In other words, the sand was up to here, down at the bottom of the groove, and like over thousands of years, the wind blowing the sand up against this structure would carve out this groove in the rock. So you'll see there's lots of that. There's places where you're walking through a temple and it'll be 30 or 40 feet above you. There'll be these big grooves, in the temple wall where that's how deeply it was buried in sand.
Wow. And there are even carvings into the wall to make a place where people could tie up their
donkeys or camels or
donkeys. Yeah. Way up there where you can't reach them.
Yeah.
And then down at the bottom where you're walking, the walls are like beautifully preserved and the carvings are all still there. But up at the top, you can see all the carvings have been etched away because they were etching off their faces.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, for scale, how big is that block? Like, how big is that doorway down there? Is that a doorway or?
I'm pretty sure that those notches in the foreground there are almost like at your head height.
Yeah, this is like head height here. So you could walk through this, but you'd have to bend over, right? I think.
I thought that was like a little cat hole.
No, these are huge.
Well, again, it could be a deeper entrance and buried in the sand or buried underneath.
Yeah.
It.
Well, we do go inside of it. So, but this is the thing. Okay, so again, we're looking at the east side of the pyramid here, and you can see again we're looking at the pillowy casing stones. Notice that these scoops going up and down. They're vertical in some cases. Sometimes they look horizontal. Like here's one that seems to be going side to side here, right? And then there's all these much reduced nubs along this layer up here. But really what we're focusing on here, oh, and here's the millstone. See? Somebody was making granite millstone out of one of the casing stones there. But what we're looking at here is how this temple, these walls, butt up against the pyramid casing stones, and it's kind of a rough job against rough stone. So to me, again, I don't know how to deconstruct this site. All I want to say is that as a builder myself, I feel like this is kind of a rough job. It doesn't.
Well, all right. Yeah, but I did go to the inside of that connection, and it's not all rough.
It's not.
Yeah, there's some good cuts. Like this outside part is pretty rough. But there are multiple places where the walls butt up against the pyramid, and it's like
I
went and looked at all of them. Yeah, and they're cut, they're form fit for the most part, except for erosion. And that's my opinion. That the roughness of it is mostly due to erosion.
Okay.
We'll look at it again.
Does it? Yeah. Does it look like these granite casing stones were finished, or are they still all pillowy in there?
Oh no, they're all pillowy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of what I think is that it seems like, and I'm not sure. Again, Kyle and I have gone back and forth about this every time we talk about it. I wonder if whoever was putting the casing on there intended to flatten all of it and didn't finish the job, and then somebody way later came along, or just later came along and added this.
Yeah, I mean, why would you, if that was done at the same time and you didn't flatten that, then it's a lot harder to go in and flatten up to the edge, instead of doing all the flattening before,
Yeah, it seems like you'd flatten this first before you put that there. So unless they intended for it to be sitting up, butted against rough, unflattened blocks, then I don't know. I'm just not sure.
So the effect that this would create if you had the casing stones rough and pillowy, and then you built this pyramid temple also rough, and you fit those joints together to the roughness of the casing stones, when you come back and flatten it, and you're flattening into the temple part as well as into the casing stone part, then you're going to end up with joints that go around corners.
Yeah. It would be a lot smoother that way. Yeah.
And you'd see that in their construction in many places. So that was my initial thought.
But do they ever flatten limestone like that?
Yeah.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Usually it's obvious. It's for the most part, the stuff that's preserved is like the Tura limestone because it's harder.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. I mean, the bent pyramid is a great example.
Yeah.
The flattened limestone on the bent pyramid. So yeah, that was my initial thought here, is that these connections were to look like the joints went around the corners.
Okay.
But I don't know.
I like that. Yeah. So yeah, I see what you're saying. If they would have come in later and smoothed all this out, you would end up with a cool sort of heterogeneous granite limestone line here.
Yeah, and
the
places where the granite goes deeper in towards the pyramid, you would have the limestone block kind of go around a corner, and the places where the granite was sticking out, the granite would go around the corner into the temple.
Yeah, that's what I wonder. Since they were to flatten this, you'd be removing 12, maybe 14 inches of granite.
Most of the granite would just kind of
it would stick out towards the limestone. It would look pretty cool. Yeah, that would be really interesting. It just never got done. Either way, it didn't get completed. So this is from the inside of the temple, looking at the pyramid. Yeah. And again, you can see this. This is evidence of sand erosion, like this was filled with sand and the wind was blowing it up against here. Probably. I mean, we don't know, but that's what we were told most of the time here.
What about water?
What's that?
What about water? Did that ever get flooded?
I don't know. The plateau, you're pretty high up.
Yeah, see this way out here? This is Cairo. You're way above it. Whenever people asked Yusuf about this, he would point out to the city and say, "Look how far above Cairo we are, and the Nile is down there, down at the bottom of Cairo." So yeah, I mean, if it would have been flooded, it would have been hundreds and hundreds of feet. It would have had to, the water would have, and that's not impossible, as we know. We all have seen Randall's stuff. It just, did it happen while these structures were here? It's not clear. But that's a good question.
Looks like there's another one on the left there.
Oh, yeah, right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I've started to wonder about all these strange, maybe I shouldn't even talk about this yet, but there's these square cuts. You can kind of see, well, I'll point this out later.
I think
they were casing it.
That's right.
Those were casing stones that are removed because this temple has some left.
You see that?
See these square cuts? Here's one.
Yeah, they look like all these small impressions into the limestone.
Yeah.
And anywhere where a limestone structure was cased, whether it be the ground, like when the ground was tiled, even with other limestone.
Yeah.
That limestone has been removed, and you're looking at the bedrock. The bedrock is a bunch of squarish depressions.
Yeah, all of different depths.
In different depths because they just, that's how they. But of course, the tile floor top was flat.
Yeah.
But they would sink the stones into the bedrock at different depths, and they'd be different shapes.
Just as hard as possible, right? Just make it as difficult as possible.
So you see it in walls too, and there's even another pyramid on Giza that we went to that has it's almost completely gone. I think it's Kintkawas pyramid.
Oh yeah.
What's left is the limestone bedrock just jutting up, and they actually carved the limestone bedrock into a pyramid form.
The bottom of the pyramid. Yeah.
And then they built the rest of the pyramid on top of it and then cased it. And so all of that is gone. And you see this limestone bedrock form that's got all these square and rectangular indentions and into the sides of it. It's wild.
So this is where the temple's still skirted?
Yes, it's cased here.
Right.
Yeah. And so again, you see a different style of making, and these are kind of, I think these are like diorite. I'm not sure, but it's a form of granite, very hard. It's got a lot of quartz crystal in it. The silica inclusions. These you can see these. All this white material is like a quartz stuff. So this is a type of granite again, and it's got this interesting facing style where they did flatten the middle of the block face, but they left the outside edges rough. And again, when you're thinking about this is a known style type. I've seen this in other places where that's been done. Like this, there's blocks like this at Baalbek, which is very interesting. This is a kind of masonry style where the block is rough, but they flatten a square or a rectangle out of the front face, but leave the outer edges not flat.
Stops them from getting chipped.
That's right. It protects them, keeps them from getting chipped. And it's the same thing with the casing stones over the pyramid. The fact that they left them sort of pillowy or puffy like that protects what, the intended face from being damaged during construction, right? So once they flatten it out, that's the intended face. But if you've got 12 or 14 inches of stone over top of that until the very end of the job, then you've protected your
finished surface.
Your finished surface. So like if Johnson's way up there and he drops a block and it goes rolling down the entire pyramid, but most of those blocks still have a bunch of material on top of them above the finished face, then the finished face isn't damaged.
Johnson's fucking fired.
He would be fired if he did that. That's right.
Sacrificed.
That's the old kind of fire.
That's right. That's how you do it in the old days. So again, you can see how these were kind of cut in here to face this. It's very interesting. So again, I wonder, now there are some chisel marks here, but you can see how these blocks were sort of they're kind of roughly fitting this limestone material. Now, I don't know. This could be that this temple was already, look at how these on this side, down this hallway, this lower course of blocks here, some of them have been deeply set in, like they've cut out of this material here, and other ones not so deeply set. So I just wonder if somebody else came in after this temple was already old and then started casing it. So again, this we may be looking at multiple stages of construction with an unknown time period in between each stage.
Once they were able to do what they could already do with limestone with harder rocks?
Could be. Yeah, it could be that.
Is there a lot of this casing in this area here?
Well, again, this is on Giza, so lots of Giza has casing stones on various places that look like it's very ancient, very eroded limestone that has been cased and stuff after the erosion took place.
But in this particular temple, it's just this hallway.
Yeah, just this hallway. But again, remember we were out here in the wider area, and you can see these little square cuts.
And I'm sure this granite was just quarry.
Somebody took most of the casing stones. Stole them. So,
okay, let's lay out this timeline real quick before you leave that. So
okay.
The questions are, was the pyramid originally cased in granite? There's some ideas that it was granite part of the way up, and then it was Tura limestone the rest of the way. But the question is, was it initially cased in this harder stone, or was the pyramid already old when somebody decided to case it in the granite? The next question is, did they intend to flatten the whole thing? And then did the people that built the pyramid temple, which butts up against the pyramid, did that happen like at the same time as the building of the casing stones, or did that come much later? Because you could make the case that the pyramid temple was built much later after the people who were casing it put down their tools and never showed back up.
That's right.
However many thousands of years go by, or hundreds, and then somebody builds the pyramid temple, then they stop what they're doing enough time for that limestone to get so eroded that then another group of people come along and start to case that in granite.
Yeah.
And then they put their tools down, and then other people came and tore all that granite off again. So it's like everywhere you go here, you're faced with this incredible amount of time that things have been being built and torn down and rebuilt and eroded and then fixed and restored and eroded again. And so it's hard to know, but trying to analyze it by looking at the building style seems like there may well have been at least 2 different phases.
Yeah. Possibly 3.
Yeah. And even possibly more than that.
Yeah.
But it comes down to the style and at least the tools necessary to do the types of jobs, especially with the hard granite.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I have wondered, like when they were building these. This is the Great Pyramid, by the way, and this picture is taken from on top of the basalt paving. So this is basalt out in front of the Great Pyramid, and just look how flat and nice that. I mean, it's cracked and damaged, obviously. But look how flat that tile floor is, made of basalt.
It's a huge area.
It's really massive. Yeah. I wish, I was just thinking about this the other day. Where else does your tile floor stay flat for 5,000 years? These guys were good at what they did. But the question I've had is, is it possible that the people who built the original core masonry of these pyramids actually just cased them in the same kind of limestone, but just nicely done, smoothly, finished? But then that was just so eroded over time that somebody later came and just took all that material off there and then cased it in something harder. Because it does look like that in some cases. It's not, it's just a possibility. Again, we're speculating here.
You can see in some of the limestone casing how eroded they are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are pocked full of holes and they're just devastated.
Yeah.
Still in place, but yeah, it looks like a creek's been running over them for a long time.
Yeah. So this is what's interesting about this. Again, we're looking at these tiles. Now, this is basalt, so this is hard stuff. This is an igneous rock, unlike the limestone beneath it. Now, it's unclear what's going on down here, how much of this is modern repair. I think this is mortar. This looks like mortar to me, and this probably does too. This might be mortar. But these are limestone tiles down here. So again, we're looking at what looks like multiple stages of just tiling this area in front of the pyramid. You've got the bedrock below all this stuff where you can see, if you're walking around, you can see sockets in the bedrock for giant limestone tiles. And then those limestone tiles have been heavily eroded by time. And then somebody came along and installed like a basalt tiling on top of the eroded limestone tiles and fit the bottoms of the basalt tiles to the erosion of the limestone tiles, just to make the job, a lot harder. Like, if you were going to retile something, normally you go in and peel up all the old tiles and put down new ones, on a flat surface.
You get yourself a flat surface.
Unless it's super easy to manipulate
That's right.
the surface of the
Yes.
I'd be willing to bet that they laid all these blocks down in there, and then they came along with some kind of planer and flattened the tops.
Yeah.
Once they were already in place.
Yeah. Just flattened it. But you still had to work those surfaces.
They had to work all the mating
Look
surface.
at these, like, incredibly
faces.
irregular mating faces for these blocks.
Yep. Yeah, it's insane. And like you said, it seems like it was easy for them. Or at least they had a really good method.
And here's a nice saw cut. Right, so again, we're looking at the side of the basalt tiling on top of heavily eroded limestone stuff. Some of this is bedrock, some of these are big limestone tiles, and there's these saw cuts, these anomalous cuts where you can actually see cutting grooves back in these horizontal cutting grooves in the stone, and sometimes you can see there's an actual radius, sometimes not, where you start to imagine a really huge circular saw. Like really big. Like the radius is so slight that you're just like, what is this thing, like 30 meters across?
And the thickness is still only like a quarter of an inch.
Right.
Which is interesting too, because wherever you find basalt, you can usually find overcuts in the basalt.
Yeah.
Not just in Giza, but all over Egypt, where we were in Tanis. And it was like, oh, look, there's some basalt blocks over here. There's just a bunch of them laying around. And we start looking at them. Boom, saw cuts.
Yeah, there's saw cuts and overcuts on them. Where somebody cut a little too far.
A bunch of that stuff on the right there looks like grout.
Yeah. Yeah, that does look like mortar.
Yeah, this looks like
ancient grout. Or what about ancient stuff that looks like stone now?
It could be. I mean, so these are limestone tiles, right, down here. And they're socketed into the bedrock in an irregular way.
I don't think that joint on the right there is original. Mainly because it looks like the bottom of the basalt is fractured, and they don't typically put like a broken rock in there.
Yeah. It's possible that this is fractured.
So a modern fix, you think?
Modern mortar was stuck in there because they're trying to keep the place together.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of repairs to the outside of the pyramid. And they try to make it look like part of it as well. But yeah, we don't know about that.
So let me back this up here. This is a short video that Kyle took. You want to explain what you're doing here?
Yeah, so these are two of the basalt tiles that are just on an island, basically. Left over, and they're still in place up against the bedrock, and they are still extremely accurately flat with the rest of the basalt tile floor. So I was just kind of trying to illustrate it.
They're far separated from this area, which is the rest of the basalt floor, and Kyle was just showing how still accurately
how well they've been
they've been
seated,
set. Yeah. So here we go.
And it may not be very smooth playing, but
yeah, let me stop it there. Yeah, it's not very smooth. It's nice and smooth on my laptop. Okay, there. Bam. Look how flat that is with the rest of the floor. See it?
Yeah, that's crazy. You should have pushed it over.
Right there. Look at that. It's just amazing.
I mean, it's really just a matter of time till those are knocked over.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time. But yeah, it's just the point.
But look at the rest of the floor. Just look how beautiful that is,
How heavy are each of those rocks, you think?
Oh, man.
I'd say at least a ton, these ones right in front of me here.
Jesus.
Yeah, basalt.
That one, that giant one over to the right jutting out there is probably 2 or 3 tons.
Yeah, basalt is heavy.
Could be more. I don't know. I just, the only thing I can base that on is rocks that I've dug up and hauled around at the vineyard. I rented like an 8-ton Skytrack giant forklift thing. And I was surprised at the rocks I could not pick up. I was just like, oh my God, this is not even like, this is tiny compared to the stuff we were looking at in Egypt. And I can't pick it up with this 8-ton
machine. Yeah, 8-ton lifting machine.
Or maybe it was 8,000 pounds. So 4 tons.
4 tons. Okay. So real quick, we'll just take a look here at the Valley Temple.
Damn, that's pretty smooth work.
Yeah. So this to me, I think that this was probably a bunch of pillowy blocks the same way, but they finished the flattening job. And again, these people that were whoever was installing this granite was installing it over much older, already eroded, much larger limestone core blocks. But yeah, just look at that. I just love this doorway, and you know how these blocks are all irregular. And they've got these nice, beautiful inclusions of material. So again, you can see how they go around corners here. And there's this is a small version of what we were looking at over on Makare. There's a radius that goes all the way up these walls, all the way to the top. So it starts at the you would think of it as starting at the top and goes all the way down, like somebody, like, you put all the blocks in there, and they're all kind of rough on the inside faces. And then you get up on top of the wall, and you drill 4 holes where you want the corners to be, and then you come in with your planing machine and face the blocks until you get to those drill holes, and those become the corners. You see what I'm saying? And that's what makes some of the blocks go around the corners.
That's how you'd core out a hole in the concrete nowadays.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that's what it looks like, because it would be one thing if they were just kind of sweep around the corner, but there's a clear, like horizontal striation in like a 3/4 inch, diameter circle.
Yeah.
Right in that corner, and you can just see these striations. It looks like a tube drill.
Yeah.
But it goes all the way up to the top. So it'd be like a massively long tube drill that somebody started from the very top of the wall and drilled all the way down.
Yeah. And just look at this monster right here. Around the doorways, they would put these gigantic blocks, and then there's just one
on the other
one
side,
going
too.
across the top, and then there's this gigantic thing here. This is a huge block as well. And again, I'll point out, in the back here, up at the top, is where you can see the remnants of the original limestone core masonry that this stuff is actually casing against on the inside. So here's what Kyle was talking about. You see this line?
That white
line going down the corner? All the way down? When you're there and you can walk up to this and look at it, it's really clear that that's just a continuous line that goes across the blocks all the way down, like it was drilled from the top.
Or like that was the edge of the machine.
So here I'm just showing the precision of the joints. This is actually a 3-way joint here. This is a horizontal join between these 2 blocks, and then there's a vertical one here. And it's so finely done that you can barely see it. And of course, the granite itself is heavily eroded, which implies great age. Like, how long does it take for granite like this to decompose like that? Because it used to be flat and smooth. It was probably shiny. They probably polished it. I mean, if indications of other places in Egypt where they did work like this is that this surface was probably incredibly smooth to a glass finish.
There's a granite pyramidion in the in the museum that was on top of a pyramid, and it is a mirror surface of black granite. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And to imagine that entire structure being at its final stage, being just this black mirror in the desert. It's just it's so awesome.
Well, it gives a whole different perspective or perception of how advanced they were or how beautiful things were, because we just think of them still as, as sort of a rough, I mean, maybe not Egypt so much, but just a rough civilization. But imagine if everything was all polished and shiny and fit perfectly together. I mean, it would be immaculate.
Yeah.
Yes.
But look at this. Look at where these blocks are sitting against each other. You can barely tell where the line is. It's right there. That's just amazing. It's so cleanly done that it looks like one block. Like the only way you would have been able to tell when it was new would be a discontinuity in all the various grains of the granite. There would be a line of discontinuity through the grains. That's just, I don't know. I find this just to be absolutely amazing. Here's another one. This is an outside corner, so the block joint goes around here and then around the corner in this way. And you can see, again, how heavily eroded and degraded, decomposed this granite is. But look how finely these blocks are set against each other. And no mortar, just polish them so perfectly that when you sit them down on top of each other, the joint is perfect.
They're wrung together.
Yeah.
You might not see that when you polish it.
You might not see that.
Yeah. It's just amazing.
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing. It's called ringing something together, and when they use this in machining tools. You can machine the surfaces of two pieces of metal, two pieces of steel so precisely that you can stick the two flat surfaces together or slide them together or turn them, and they're rung together. They're stuck. They will not. Yeah. You can't pull them apart. Like you can hang
surface tension there that just
there's some kind of chemical surface tension. Yeah,
you can hang hundreds of pounds from these two pieces of metal and they will not come apart. But you could twist them apart and slide them off of each other.
Yeah,
so it's possible. Like our friend Archer, you guys have met Archer. He's an engineer. He's speculated that you could perhaps do this with granite as well. You get the surfaces so flat that they are rung together.
Yeah. Which would just seal it,
Yeah.
So it's just like trying to pick up a fucking quarter off the coffee table. It's just like motherfucking
That's right.
And it doesn't have to be like they're not vibrated together or anything. They're just placed together. And if the metal surfaces are so smooth.
Oh, yeah. No, you can do it with your hand. You can take the two and just
almost like a magnet.
Just kind of you set them together and twist them
it.
And
then you just can't get them apart. You give it that little bit of friction heat, and then it just binds together. It's crazy.
You have to slide them apart.
Yeah.
You can't pull the two faces away from each other.
So this is an example of where some of that granite that's casing this temple is butted up against the limestone core, and you can see how it's kind of built into this irregularity here. There are other places where you can see this better. I want to get better shots when I go back, because there are places where you can tell where the casing stone was put up against already kind of degraded or eroded limestone. So again, we may be looking at two stages of construction. That's the point. All right. So let's go. We were up here at Giza. We're going to go 300 miles up the Nile, down south to the Osirian. So here's the Osirian, and you can see this is the temple of Seti I here. And it's got this interesting L shape. Most of these temples that were done like this, at least in other places, they were just long rectangles. The entire temple would just be a long rectangle, but this one has this interesting L shape. And the Osirian is here. Like it looks like the Osirian was in the way of the continuation of the temple, and they just kind of turned it to the left. So standard model says that Seti I had this temple built, and the Osirian was part of the temple complex, and that his engineers built them both. But I'm more of the alternative view is that Seti's engineers came out here and started digging the foundations for this temple, and they found this. They found the Osirian under the ground, already ancient and buried. And that's why the temple goes around the corner here.
And also this temple is made of sandstone.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Sandstone, and it's plastered and covered in writing.
Right.
Whereas the
sandstone
Osirian
is much softer, much easier to work.
Yeah.
And then, it's not, I mean, I don't know if I would call it megalithic in comparison to the Osirian. It's just not nearly as megalithic.
It's beautiful. It is, but it just doesn't compare.
And that's Cairo right on the right there, or some other city? Is that a city right there on the far right?
Yeah, this is down in Saqqara. I think.
Yeah, that's all like modern city.
Yeah, this is all modern stuff. Yeah. So this is looking down into the Osirian from above, and as you can see, it's way below the modern ground level. Like you can see, this is ground level out here, and this thing is way down in the ground, and it's incredibly ancient and also megalithic. It's like these blocks are absolutely gigantic and enormous. And again, we'll see lots of signs of quarrying. People were stealing from this site for a long time, taking this granite.
It's at Abydos.
Abydos, sorry. That's right. The Serapeums at Saqqara. Abydos. There's another view down into it. This is modern. People have asked about this. What is this tunnel? This is a modern, like, sort of tourist entrance. You kind of walk through this thing, and then you come out into here. And this is also modern, these stairs and stuff. And some of this, I think, is also modern, just to hold back the sand. This might be a couple hundred years old. I'm not sure. But this has been dug out multiple times. But as you can see, it's so deep into the ground that the water table has filled it up. There are levels below this. This is just the top level. And I don't know. There may have been a level on top of this. It's completely gone now. It's not clear. But
there might have been a pyramid on top of that.
There could have been.
There could have been. There's no sign of it now. But yeah, this is so deep down into the ground. It's 40 to 50 feet below ground level. So this is just groundwater in here. And there are rooms below this. So there's another floor below this, and I think maybe another one below that. There's at least one more level down. So that makes you wonder, when was this built? Like, who was building it where they were building it underwater? Or would they have been building it in a time when the groundwater was way, way, way lower?
Like during the Ice Age.
Yeah.
SETI.
What the fuck did you say?
SETI the first.
SETI the first built it.
I bet you're going to show us the footage of SETI, the temple, and it's probably going to be completely different looking than this.
Yeah, we will look at some temple examples, yeah. But again, we're just talking about the groundwater here, and it's the Nile did used to go up and down. There was like the dry season in the Nile floods, and so the water table would go up and down, but not enough to completely empty out these rooms down here. So the question just is, like, really, if it was somebody during dynastic Egypt periods where the Nile flooding was a pretty regular thing going up and down, why would SETI have his engineers dig and build a structure that was so deep into the ground that they would be in the water during the building of the deepest levels all the time? It just doesn't make any sense. So here we are going into the entrance. You can see the enormity of some of these blocks. Now, I'm not sure when this was put here. I don't think this doesn't look the same as the rest of the structure, although it is beautiful.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a different type of stone there too.
Yeah, it's sandstone stuff.
Yeah.
So this is down inside the structure, and you can see this other tourist group up here that are very jealous of us.
They didn't get as cool of a.
They don't get to go down in here
as we did,
like we do. That's right. But again, look at the size of these megalithic blocks. So again, we're looking at engineering where it's just like, are they just doing it in the most difficult way possible, or was this just easy for them? Because you want to build a column, and you're just like, okay, I want a big column here, and I want it to just be one block. Right.
That is easier if you can just make it happen.
Yeah, making it happen is the hard part. And in some cases, these blocks may be socketed into the floor. So we'll look at some of that.
I think you're actually looking in the previous picture at the square hole there with the water in it was another socket.
Yes. We'll get
There's multiple of them in a row right there.
Yeah. So there were blocks that were in those sockets. So this is a more modern attempt at stealing some stone here, and we'll see a lot of this later when we go to the quarry. But basically, this technique is you take a hard chisel, probably steel or at least iron. You make some notches in the granite in a line, and then you put either wooden wedges or metal wedges, whatever, into all those notches, and then you pound them in a regular fashion. If they're metal, you just keep pounding them in until the rock breaks off. If they're wooden, which would be an older style of it, you pour water on them and the wood swells, and then it would split the rock. Right? So this is a more modern attempt, and they're basically just attempting to steal the corner of the block. And you can see this failed, right? These guys didn't go down. You would want to go all the way down here to be able to break this whole corner off.
Well, it looks like it broke off right at the about
they just got they just got the top edge.
They hammered those top couple of spikes in a little too hard and just didn't get a clean break there.
That's right.
They're lucky that whole thing might have fallen on their head.
I'm wondering if the sand was actually filled up all the way to the bottom of that cut.
The sand was like up here somewhere, so they didn't even know how tall the block was.
I would assume.
But again, you can see, and this down here, you can see some water lines on the block. So the water has, would come up and down, at least up to there, maybe higher. Here again, and there's lots of interesting stuff about this. We probably don't have time to go. We're already going long here, I think. But here's some graffiti.
Khufu.
I think this might be Hellenistic, this Greek
stuff. We came here on a snake boat.
Yeah.
And found this cool thing.
Brothers of the Serpent was here.
That's right.
Was that you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, is that us? And then there's this one. I know a lot of people are interested in this. The Flower of Life is over here. I can't. There we go. See it? Right here.
Oh,
you can kind of see it. But this is just graffiti. This is like drawn in or something. It's ochre, I think. But again, you see the water lines from the raising and lowering of the water table here. So sometimes these pillars were underwater. And again, somebody was stealing the corners off of these upper blocks, quarrying them off there. But just look at that. Look how amazing that is. It's hard to convey this with pictures. When we go in November, you guys are going to see when you're walking around in this thing. When you first walk into this temple and you see that first giant single granite block column in front of you, it's just it's so absolutely enormous. It's hard to understand why somebody would try to do it this way.
It's got to be 10 or 15 tons.
Oh, it's got to be more. It's more than that, I think. Yeah,
I'd say they're about 100.
Yeah, they might be 100 tons or more.
Yeah. Based on the size of the Serapeum boxes, they're about
roughly the same size.
Roughly about that size, except the Serapeum boxes weigh about 100 tons and they're hollowed out.
Hollow. Now, wouldn't that be interesting if these are hollow and they're full of stuff?
They might be boxes. They would have found that out already.
Yeah. But yeah, look at this. Just look at the construction style. Okay, I want a column. It just needs to be one block. And then we're going to make, the beams across the column, those also need to be one block per span. And then they would do the same thing in the ceiling. So this is not the ceiling. There would be the roof blocks across the top of this. And those are also absolutely gigantic. Just huge slabs going across the top.
It just doesn't leave a lot of room either, for openness. There's, like with using those huge.
Yes.
Looks like there's not really a lot of room left. Like what are you using that other space?
It's quite a difference in that's one of the big contrasts with going into the temples versus coming into this place is the temples are gigantic. They're open. I mean, and now in some cases, in certain parts of temples, the columns are so enormous and they're so close together that you do feel crowded by the columns.
Yeah.
But they're covered in artwork. The ceiling's so high up there, and then of course there are very wide open places within those temples.
Huge courtyards or hypostyle halls, as they call them.
It's so obvious that people are meant to be in those places, and then you come to this place, and it's just like you feel like you're in the basement of some gigantic engineering something or other. I don't know.
That's right. That's exactly what it's like.
You're like,
and there's just not a lot of room to walk around these things. What is the deal with the water's down in these tracks here? So it's just like, what is the purpose of this space? And here's a socket, right? So I'll try to point this out. It's kind of faint, but you can see this line around
where the column used to be.
The column used to sit in this socket, and it probably had a
6-inch lip,
like a flange on it or something.
Almost looks like a
flange
foot.
that's set in this. Yes, and it's crazy. I don't know if I've got a picture of this in here, but some of these on these blocks going across the top, they were also flanged in. There's like a I don't know what to call it.
Almost like a keystone.
Yeah, a keystone groove or whatever, and the block is slid into this on the top of that up there. It's nuts. Like, I don't know if I've got a picture of that in this. Yeah, I didn't get it. It's over on this side of this. Anyway,
get to the meat here.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of the ceiling blocks. These are the only ones three of them that are left. There's one of the hallways. Okay, so we'll compare. Here's some temple. Classic dynastic Egyptian temple. Every surface covered in glyphs, artwork, writing, pictures, sculptures.
And the columns are stacks of column drum
Yeah,
stones.
they're discs. Stacks of discs. Still would have been very difficult, but not nearly the same kind of work as what we're looking at in the Osirian here. Look at the difference. It just doesn't even look like the same kind of building thinking. There's no writing.
It's as far apart as possible.
Stylistically.
It looks more like that would be the foundation for that other stuff.
Yeah.
That's the parkade.
Yeah, but it's the other interesting thing about it is that the work on this granite stone looks so similar to the work in the quarry and on Minkare or the small pyramid.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff I would point out here, but we need to move along here. So let's get moving. Okay, this wall, this is one of the outer walls of the Osirian, and again, just like the small pyramid we were looking at earlier, notice how the blocks here they kind of got a regular horizontal line, but they're irregular otherwise, and then they're also kind of pillowy. And then you see lots of vertical scooping marks. The time of day here, we were able to see this with the shadows. See the way it's like scooped or scraped or something. These blocks have a lot of vertical tool marks on them. And then some very faint nubs possibly here. Some indents here and here. Maybe this is two nubs, or maybe this is a scoop out of this block. I don't know. But again, you can kind of just see hints of tool marks.
It just looks like it was soft and somebody went at it with a butter knife and just was like, let's shave it real quick.
Yeah.
It just has that look about it. That soft
It does.
look.
Or it's the butter knife they use to get it out of the quarry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But here somebody was actually being really careful with the butter knife and actually making it flat. So this is that same wall, but from this picture I'm turning to the right. So this is underneath the three remaining ceiling blocks here, roof blocks up here, and somebody was coming along and flattening this wall to a fine finish here, a flat face. And you can just see where the tool was stopping. It looks to have had at least, some kind of width here. And they were just, you'd scrape down and stop, scrape down and stop, scrape down and stop, scrape down and stop. And you're kind of going along. This goes all the way to the corner. Look at that. And they were removing several inches of stone here at the least, maybe 3 or 4 inches at least. scrape, 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 and making this beautiful flat surface like they had already done to the ceiling.
And it's obvious they don't care how far down they go. It's like painting.
Yeah.
Like you're painting with a roller down from the ceiling. You're not really concerned with where you're stopping because you know you're going to come down the ladder and keep painting further down.
Yeah. And when you're doing this kind of finish work, you start at the top and work your way down.
Yeah.
Just like you do with painting. You know, you start in the top of the corner and you paint and you go all the way across the top and then you come back and you do the next layer down. And for whatever reason, they were doing this with this wall, and they got to here and they stopped and they never came back and finished the job. So again, we have an indication, just like over at the pyramid, that somebody was in the process of flattening granite with some kind of tool that it looks like it was just easy, and they intended to do it to this entire wall and they didn't finish the job. And this is the kind of thing, you know, if you're painting and you get that done and it's like 5 o'clock and you're like, all right, well, you know, you put your tools down in the corner or whatever, you like maybe you lay your ladder down and then you go home, you know, you have a beer, you pass out, and then the entire world ends and you never go back to work and your tools just sit there and the job never gets finished. Because how else would this happen, you know?
I know a couple jobs around town that might end up like this.
Well, I mean, it could have been more catastrophic than that. I mean, it could have been like, you know, you're fucking dropping your brush and running out of there because of some sort of huge event.
Yeah, maybe the guy who was doing this died in here.
Maybe you don't get paid.
Yeah, you don't get paid when you die.
Maybe your paychecks just you stop getting paid. Everyone's just like, what the fuck, man? The money's run out.
Well,
the food's run out. Yeah. The grain, you know.
The financial crisis of 5000 BC.
Yeah. I'm done with this shit.
But again, it's just
first union strike.
And they switched over to slaves.
It's so similar to the pyramid and how there's this flattened face, which implies this one implies it much more than that over the pyramid. You could argue that surface over at the pyramid, maybe that's the only part they intended to flatten, and they were just going to leave it that way. But this really looks like a job that was in the middle of being worked on that just didn't get completed.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, when you look at the pyramid in context with the pyramid temples, what is the temple there that has all the flattened granite inside it? I just forgot the name. The one you showed pictures of. Anyway.
Oh, the Valley Temple.
The Valley Temple in Giza. It's all flattened. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I bet that those rocks started out pillowy, right? I mean, you can just see by the way the joints in the corners work. If you zoom in on this corner here at the top, you can see that block on the top left of the corner went around the corner by 4 to 6 inches to the right.
Right here.
So it was pillowy out there.
You can see the irregularity of this joint, right? Like, it used to be pillowy here, but they just carved in 3 or 4 inches, like Kyle says, and that makes this block go around the corner.
Right. So it's like you see that when you see that in a corner, you know that when they were stacking it up, those blocks were sticking out that far.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how much material they removed from the block.
And we know that like there wouldn't really be any easy way to do that nowadays, right? Like whatever kind of hilty tool or saw or blade or chemicals
doing it in place like this. No.
Yeah, trying to do it in place and make that fine, nice corner is going to be very difficult. It's going to take special tools. Now, can we build tools to do this? Yes.
Yeah.
We surely can. I don't think that we have industrial sized tools to do this kind of thing because we just don't build that way. It's not that we're incapable. It's just that we don't do this.
It's also just ridiculous amount of work to grind.
It is.
If we had to mechanically grind off 3 inches, 3 to 12 inches, I mean, it'd just be ridiculous.
Right. Well, you can imagine that our technologically advanced civilization could build the machines that could do this. I believe that we can do that. We just don't have a reason to do it. So it begs the question, what was their reason to do this?
Yeah. I also just want to point out this is a nub, the remnants of a nub, and it was clearly in the process of being planed off here. So this to me is a good indication that most of these nubs were construction related.
You can see the edge of the nub that goes up into the carved away part. Yeah.
It looks pretend. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. It looks like CGI.
Yeah, I'm
looks fake, Darren.
It's fake. You guys didn't go anywhere.
So I got a video here. This is just me looking at this wall again. Like the videos don't come through very well.
It's a series of pictures.
Yeah, it's just a series of photos. I probably just shouldn't even play it. Or I can send these to you guys and you can add them in post. Post. In what? Yeah, I'll just skip that. It's pointless.
Definitely not with video. Look at the way all the doors are like relief cut too.
Yeah. And they cut, and I like how they cut up into the.
Yeah, I bet you they used to be like
the block above goes around the corner. Yeah. I would like to point out that these small rocks, the small blocks there in the corners, I think. So we saw many of these in outside corners where they do not
I can go back to those. I skipped them.
They clearly do not go all the way through the course of the block. They're there, in my opinion, to repair a busted corner that was going to be. Again, if you're going to flatten the face, you don't want any voids, right? You don't want anything that's going to leave a hole in your flattened surface. So if you know,
by the time you flatten that, you won't even see it. By the time you flatten and polish it, it'll just disappear.
That's right. Yeah. That block was to fix a busted corner. So they beautifully fitted this tiny little block in there, and later when they come and flatten it, you won't see it.
Right.
And so if you go back to the other picture, you'll see a couple of.
There's this one.
That's a beautiful one right there, and you can see somebody already shaped that one a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a finished surface for the inside of these little alcoves.
But again, they were probably repairing damage to this corner of this block.
Right. There was a gouge out of it.
They fit this in there, and then they've started to finish it, and it's just beautiful.
Go back to the other one.
In the video.
So I used to think before I went and saw these that
they're right here.
No, there's two right there. Just that these blocks, in my mind, I imagined them like going all the way through the wall. They don't. They may be, 4 or 5 inches thick, deep into the wall.
Yeah, they're just intended to fill those voids that were either damaged or.
It's a facade.
Yeah.
To create that flat surface when they're done, which is awesome. I mean, that's just a great way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So from the Osirian here at Abydos, right? Was it Abydos?
That's right.
We're going to go another 200 miles up the Nile, down south to Aswan, the quarry. So here's an overhead view from Google Earth of the quarry, and you can see this. Look at this thing. This is the unfinished obelisk sitting in there. This is the main draw for this quarry, but this whole granite outcrop here at Aswan was the main source for much of the Old Kingdom structures that we've been looking at. Or the Osirian or whatever. That's got granite from this place, the pyramids or whatever. So this is probably where they got some of it, at least. So this is us standing in I guess what they said, this used to be where the Nile would flood in, right? So during the Nile flooding season, the water would come up to this level somewhere in here, and they could bring in boats and then load stones onto it and get it out in the river. That's what they say.
Do you buy it?
I mean, you could do it that way. I just don't think you could lift. I mean, what kind of boat?
I'll buy it for some of the later stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know about that unfinished.
Pretty ton to put 150-ton block on a boat, man.
Yeah, a boat made of reeds.
Yeah.
So here, this is a section of the quarry where there's lots of this. So this is the more modern. I mean, it's still ancient. This is still an ancient style of quarrying, but what I'm thinking of, or I refer to as the more modern stuff, because it's the anomalous scooping that I think of as the incredibly ancient stuff. So this again is where you make a bunch of divots with iron or steel chisels.
Yeah, they're cutting in from the right side.
Yeah, they're
cutting
in
to the
from
left.
The side towards the left. and what they're doing is breaking this surface off. So they got a big block off here, or multiple blocks, or one long one for an obelisk, maybe all the way down. And that's a good clean break. So whoever was doing this, they knew what they were doing, right? They got a nice clean break across here, but you can see it's rough, right? And it breaks along the fractured areas of the grain of the granite. It just puts enough pressure on it to break it that way. And then over here, they were breaking this one off. And over here, they were breaking more off of these areas, possibly down or up, whatever. But you can just see lots of this kind of regular divot marks like that is that style of quarrying with the wedges and the chisels right here.
Where's that obelisk?
Oh, we'll get to it. There's some chisel marks in the quarry. But then there's stuff like this, where it doesn't look like those chisel marks. This is something else. These strange square-ish
anti-pillows.
Yeah, anti-pillows.
Well, and it looks really like the way they smooth off the pillows.
Yes, it has the same scoopy sort of.
You're recognizing this. It's like there's a tool.
Yes,
that is common to all these sites that they're using. It has the same effect.
Right. Here's more of them.
There's some large ones.
Very large ones. Some of these kind of stair-step down. I think I'm actually looking down a slope here. So on this picture, now I'm looking back up it. See how they scoop, and the scoops are very wide, like maybe 18 inches.
So I think that there was probably a giant piece of stone on top of those, where those scoops, because those are probably the underside of some.
Yeah.
Where they were
maybe
cutting
underneath
a giant block.
Yeah.
And it's a
maybe that's why all those ones look so pillowy.
Excavating compared to finishing.
Yes, it's rougher, right? It's like you're using a big excavator.
So do you think those would be the opposite side of some of those scoop marks you see on the other ones?
Yeah, they could be.
That are already in place?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like this is the anti-pillow from the pillowy block?
Yep.
Yeah.
Could be. Yes. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense, though. I mean, it's just that's exactly the way. That's the outside.
That's the negative.
That right that sits against that little scoop mark is the outside pillow that you're looking
at. Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Bring out the pillow excavator. Here's more. And here you can see them again, these scoops along this, and there's an interesting like a kind of discontinuity in the granite here. So maybe they were getting this block and they had cut down to this area to find this spot. I don't know, but you can see them all along this. It's just interesting to kind of go through here and try to put yourself into the minds of the quarry workers or the people who are doing the construction or the architect or whatever at all these sites. And a lot of times, like I said before, you have to look through thousands of years of cultural occupation all the way up to the modern day of people modifying things and adding things and removing things and, trying to fix stuff. So like when we're looking at the basalt pavement, we're like, is that modern mortar? Is that ancient mortar? We don't know. But again, you're trying to put yourself in the minds of the people who did this, and you don't know how much of this, what's missing from this picture that we're looking at here. Here's more scoop mark. And this is the other thing you'll notice on these large areas. Like this is part of this same area. But you can see how the scoop actually goes up. Let me do a closer one here. It goes up and just goes all the way up the wall in a continuous line. All of these do this. It's hard to see in this picture. It's rather faint, but
no, you can see it. Yep.
Yeah,
I can see it all the way.
So what kind of tool can do that? Where it just goes all the way down this wall of granite and then around a corner?
Yeah, it's like the guy with the paint roller granite scraper offer thing down in the Assyrian. Yeah. He had the fine tool with the nice sharp edge that gives you the clean flat surface, and the guy in the quarry has the same kind of tool, but it's all rounded because he's been using it for forever. Tearing through so much granite that the edge of the tool's all rounded. They don't care.
Yeah, they just need to get the
giant block out of there. With all the
get it before the fucking cataclysm happens. So I mean, what did they say about that? That last picture is very, very. I mean, that's probably one of the most important pictures. I think. Like, what do they say that is? The main street.
Yeah, when you come to the quarry, they put you through a little indoctrination session where you sit down and watch a video.
Yeah,
where they tell you that they excavated all this stuff with these little diorite pounding balls.
Oh yeah, right.
By hand,
the diorite pounding balls. So this is
Dolerite, something like that.
Dolerite. I'm sorry, did I say diorite?
Yeah,
Dolerite.
So this is like a ball that came down, dunk, 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 all the way down.
So you sit there with this like cantaloupe-sized hard green dolerite stone that's a little bit harder than granite, you know,
from 5 to 45 years old, and you're just doing that one scoop,
and you just pound on it
all your whole life,
your entire
life. That one scoop.
Not allowed to switch over to old Johnny's scoop.
That's
spot.
right. This is your scoop, Graham. Scoop. Stay in your freaking scoop every day. Here's more of it.
Yeah. So in other words, the standard. They don't talk about this stuff.
Right.
They have their story and they don't need to look at it anymore.
Yeah. These are really beautifully illustrated scoops. And there's kind of an interesting, you'll notice this as the scoops go down, they're kind of changing direction in a way that makes you wonder if there was a rotating radius to the tool. Right? That if you analyze the angles of these cuts as they go along here, that if you could figure out what's happening with the tool, you could identify a center somewhere. I don't know, but it's interesting how they change angles as it goes along this line, which makes you think of some kind of extension arm that's got the tool at the end of it doing the work and turning and turning and turning, and that's making the angle change. We saw this in a couple of places. Then you have these. Test pits is what they're called. The idea here is that the quarry people wanted to dig down deep to see what the quality of the stone was before they started excavating a giant block. Because you don't want to do a whole bunch of work on a giant massive obelisk.
Which makes sense. Yeah, it's just how they got down there.
Yeah. The question is how do they dig this pit doing that pounding, thing with the balls, with the dolerite balls? Like, this is probably 30 feet deep. I mean, some of them are full of material, but a lot of them are very, very deep. Here's another one. Okay, so now we're going to look at this thing. The unfinished obelisk. And here it is. Again, this is one of those deals where I have to say it's impossible to show you the unbelievably enormous size of this thing using photographs. But it can kind of give you an idea if you just look at Yusuf back here, who's a big guy. He's at the other end of the obelisk. So that can kind of give you an idea of the scale of this thing. It's ridiculously enormous. And again, you'll see all along the face of it here. Now, whoever was cutting this out has already done a really nice job of getting some sharp edges. The edges are beveled, like they knew what they were doing. They didn't make these perfectly sharp. There's bevels on there. But you can see these same sort of grid mark of scoops all around it and all out here where they were sort of excavating the rock around it.
Yeah, and you can't see them very well in this photo, but they completely cover the entire surface.
Yeah.
And then Johnson cracked the corner. And it's like, give it up.
God dang
That's
it.
it. It's over. It's done. Go home. You're out of here.
Well, that is the story. The standard model story is that they were excavating this obelisk, and it was going to be the biggest obelisk ever that anybody had ever made ever. And then they found a crack in the stone, and they just quit. And I'm glad
all that wasted time. I mean, all that time you do, and you just leave that. You're not going to use it for anything else,
right? I'm glad you're laughing because that's the point.
You can't get any small boxes out of that.
No blocks. Sorry, that was going to be an obelisk. If it can't be an obelisk, it can't be anything else, Graham.
We have to make an example out of Johnson. Leave that there.
Leave it there forever. So I just got a bunch of pictures of this thing from different angles. Just look how massive it is.
Yeah, you can see all the scoop marks.
Yeah, and see how they beveled this edge here, right? So that it wouldn't.
Yeah, so the other thing that I think about all these, the biggest moai, the biggest obelisks, they're all left in the quarry, blah, blah, blah. But it may not be true for the moai, but for this, now that we've looked at the way that they work this granite and they make them large and then they plane them down once they get to the job, you can imagine that inside this obelisk-shaped block is the actual finished obelisk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
could be much smaller, up to a foot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Side,
Well,
Off of each side.
yeah.
So it could be a much smaller mass.
Well, it's already got to be half of that chamfer already, right? I mean, on each side. So
It could be a bunch of columns.
Well, they were already making it obelisk shaped. It's got a taper.
Was
It's got a tip at the top. Yeah. Here's the front. See, they were already making it, kind of obelisk-y. And here's the test pit, right? So again, somebody had either dug down after making this trough, but I think they probably dug down before they even started. They dug way down there to see the quality of the granite, which is, this kind of makes me doubt the whole, like, it got cracked or they found a crack in it thing. I'm not sure. These guys knew what they were doing.
It's like there was an earthquake.
An earthquake or a cataclysm. Again, this is an unfinished.
The earthquake is what made them all put down their tools and leave.
That's right. And again, look at all the scoops, and this is tough to see on this, but these scoops will go around this corner, down the wall, across the bottom of the trench down here, up the side of the obelisk, and across the top, and down the side, and again around and up the top. There is almost a sort of a continuous grid of these lines. And you can see how it's sort of grid-like over here. And you can just follow these lines from here. It'll go in. It goes around the corner here, down the side, across the bottom, up the top, across the top of the obelisk, down the side. And it's crazy. And down here, you see them. Goes across the bottom of the trench,
oh my God,
up the side of the obelisk,
obvious.
and then down the entire thing.
It's so obvious. I mean, you guys are really just showing something spectacular here in general with all these different things. Like, I cannot believe this isn't part of what we learn in school. I mean, it just seems.
Yeah.
Has anybody, like, I don't know, I haven't really seen anybody else put this kind of theme together. It's
just us, buddy.
It seems awesome. It's awesome. Very, honestly, it just seems fantastic.
And Ben, of course. Ben from Uncharted X.
We'll give Ben.
He talks a lot about the tool mark too, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just the way you guys have put together the whole thing of this theme of just unfinished. Yeah.
The glypho shills are after redemption.
What's that?
The glypho shills.
Big Ag in the house, people.
Big Ag. Yeah, I don't know if we could trust him.
Okay, so again, we're looking at the tip. This would have been the front of the obelisk, so they were already making it pointed here. But like Kyle said, you can imagine that there's just a lot of extra material on here that once they got it. And now think about that. It's also really interesting because you have to move it with all that extra material, up to a foot of material on all sides. So
it's like they didn't have a problem with that.
That's tons and tons and tons, like literal tons of granite that you are moving to the site to remove once it's there.
Well, I mean, it makes you, if they can just scoop that out like it's butter, then it's probably the same technology to just scoop it up. I mean, and move it. I mean, if you can, whatever they're doing to the structure, molecular structure of it.
Look at that. How do you think they were planning to pick that thing up?
No, they don't pick it up. I mean,
Darren, you do heavy construction. What do you think?
They were just going to roll it on some.
It's also, this is the other interesting thing. It's at this angle. It isn't flat, right?
It's tilted in the quarry.
It's tilted in the quarry. It's got this tilt.
It's very steep.
Look at that. I'm looking up, standing at the base of it, looking up.
Maybe that was to help tip
Looking
it up,
down.
and they were just going to walk it over.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is it's way above where you would have to get it down multiple levels of this rough, like there's no obvious path.
I would love to see this happen.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I just wish I could just see, like, the builders like, all right.
Yeah.
Let's
get it out of here. Because look, there's no obvious path. There's just, where are you going to take it? to get it
like
down to,
like maybe if it's tilted, maybe they do once they detach the whole thing, they tilt it. It's easier to tilt up instead of from a 90-degree sitting position.
Yeah,
you're doing it from
you're gonna stand it up
degree
in the quarry, and then what?
And then just
roll it down the hill,
dance it around, wobble it around.
That's what I'm saying. You need a flat, or you need some kind of roadway.
No, it's the same technology. It's the same technology they're using that's disintegrating this stone, right?
Yeah, whatever it was, I feel like is anomalous. Yeah,
it's an anomalous technology. Whatever they're using to do all this, they're using it to move it.
They didn't care.
Obstructions were not a.
They didn't care that there wasn't a path. This is another common theme around the world with this anomalous kind of stonework, is there doesn't seem to be like actual obvious roadways where they were moving enormous blocks. The blocks are just sitting in the mountains with no path from the quarry or to the site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
They didn't care. There's a look down the trench, and again, you can see the scoops all the way down.
Huh.
Okay, so we weren't allowed at the time we were there to go down inside these, but there's a couple of other places where this same tech was being used, this same technique was being used to carve out other gigantic blocks of stone and it's not clear what they were going to be.
Yeah, this one is a very odd shape. It looked like
very strange.
It could have been the beginning of like one of those giant statues.
Yes.
Because it looked more like a sort of pillowy head and shoulders shape or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Still, they're absolutely gigantic.
Yeah.
And the work was being done, again, with the same tool, scooping out, going down the side, and then actually down and underneath the stone and back out. I'll kind of go around and show you. So you can see how the scoops do it, and they go down this wall, and they go across the bottom of the trench here, and actually underneath this would be the block, or the thing that they were trying to get, the work. It goes underneath it, and then around the underside of the block, and then back up the side of the block face. So again, you can see how these lines are continuing.
What kind of stone is that there?
It's all granite. This is all in this granite quarry at Aswan.
Oh yeah, right. It's still that quarry. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the same granite we've been looking at on Giza. Yeah.
And again, just another huge, massive block left there, right?
Right.
Again, just unfinished.
Yeah. So look at this. The scoops go around they go down across the bottom of the trench and around and up underneath the block and then up. Look at this. Look at that. So how would you even do this? So again, you can see you follow the line down. It goes across the bottom of the trench, up underneath the work, and then around the top, and then up the side of the block.
And like, what happens to all that material you're removing? I mean, that's a lot of material you're removing. Like, and how do you just transport that out of there? Like, that's look at that size of a person right there. If you're doing that.
It's a mountain of material.
Tons.
Yeah. And none of there is no model that really deals with the amount of dust that would be caused by grinding away. Even if it was the dolerite pounding stones, how are they dealing with this dust? How are they dealing with all of the mountains of material? It's just not really dealt with.
I would think if you were doing this with big machines that could just chew through the granite, you would be flushing it constantly somehow.
Flushing it or vacuuming it out.
Yeah,
or it's just coming out, or it's just being removed the same way they remove the block itself. It's
just floated out of there. Yeah.
Just transmutated into air.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's enough of the quarry. Now we're going to move to back up close to Giza. We're going to go to Saqqara and the Serapeum. More unfinished work here. The Serapeum.
How much time we got?
Oh, I don't know.
We good?
We good on time, guys?
We're good. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Darren's falling asleep back there.
No, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting close. So again, the Serapeum, not much to look at on the surface, just a hole in the ground. But in that hole are these amazing boxes. So I'm gonna kind of go through a bunch of pictures of these things. There's a bunch of them in there. 24,
I think so. Yeah.
as you're looking at these, keep in mind that it's tough to understand the scale. But basically,
you can walk underneath that lid.
If you were standing down here, your head wouldn't touch the bottom of the lid. And again, note the scooping.
You can see somebody back there.
That's me.
Yeah, that's Kyle back there.
Breaking the law.
Breaking the law. Now, it's interesting. There's a bunch of interesting things about these boxes I'll point out real quick. They were again, they're going for this clean, sharp-lined prism shape for the lid. And then sharp-lined, box for the bottom part. But they were also scooping material out of the lid after they got this prism shape. And then they would just, after they scooped this stuff out, they polished the whole thing to a mirror shine. Even these scoops are polished. Has the same polish in them as the rest of the box.
It reminds me of what do you call it when you spin a flywheel or a disc and you balance it. It's like you balance it and then you scoop little marks out to make sure the weight is perfectly 100% balanced.
Right. You're balancing it, yeah. Some speculation is that they were scooping flaws out of the material, like once they had cut it to that prism shape that they liked, they would see like little cracks in these areas, and they would just scoop the cracks out until they were gone. Which makes you wonder, why would you do that? Like if it's just going to sit there, that crack isn't
because if the crack if it breaks off, then it's a rough surface, then it ruins some sort of surface tension or surface
if you expect it to undergo some kind of movement, then you don't want those cracks to expand. But if it's just going to sit there, like the standard model says that these were tombs, that these were special sarcophagi for the ritual burial of the Apis bulls that they would do once every 20 years or something like that. Right now they're absolutely gigantic, but like if you're just going to put a bull in there and then close it, why are you scooping all this extra material? In other words, making more work for yourself once you've cut that prism shape.
I often compare it to repairing a cymbal for like a drum set. So when cymbals get cracks in them, if you don't, like, the way to fix it is to drill a hole through the cymbal at the top of the crack.
Yeah. So the crack stops there.
So you've gotten rid of that crack, because if you keep using the cymbal, the crack's going to just keep going. So it's
splitting,
like when you're vibrating that piece of that object, it's just continuing to break the crack. So the idea of scooping out cracks or imperfections in the exterior of the stone kind of might suggest that they were expecting it to have a lot of mechanical energy acting against it, like vibration or whatever. I don't know. The other idea, some people say that they were tuning them, which,
tuning.
Again, using a cymbal as an example, like the hammering and the divots in the cymbals are a tuning mechanism. So it's like a way to tune a cymbal.
So again, you can see big scoops taken out. Another thing I like to point out on this one is this beautiful layer of, I guess this is higher silicate material in the granite. And then this is something I've noticed recently when I'm going through these. Like, what is this like row of? There's 2 rows of.
We're preparing to make a carving into that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy.
Yeah. But yeah, you can see how they took a big scoop out of the side of this right here.
Yeah, maybe that one's older. It's beat to shit already.
What's that?
That's one of the older ones. They already got it beat to shit.
Yeah. They're so beautiful. It's unbelievable how beautiful
they're covered in dust.
Yeah.
So that's why they look.
Yeah, Kyle was talking about we need to go in there with
We got to bring a roll of paper towels and some Windex, man. And polish these babies up.
Why don't they keep some of them clean? I don't get it. They put all the steel structure around it.
It's probably dusty as fuck in there, bro. I
mean, there is one that they keep clean.
Okay.
There's Kyle inspecting some scoops right off the edge here. Now you can that sort of gives you a picture of the scale. Look at that lid. Look how big that thing is.
Look at the footprints on it.
Yeah.
Has anybody done any work on measuring the dimensions of that weird shape as far as resonance or anything like that goes, or music?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to do science in Egypt. They don't like it. You're like, when we go, you'll hear Yusuf will give this talk at the beginning of the tour. He's like, "We're tourists. I know we're all here to do science on these sites, but that's actually against the rules, right? So you're not allowed to do science." So Yusuf will have things that he'll say, he'll shout it, and then everybody has to start looking like a tourist and stop doing science stuff because you'll get in trouble and we'll all get kicked out. Here's another just giant scoop taken out of here. But again, it's polished. So it's like they didn't particularly care. They were aiming for this prism shape for the lids, but they didn't particularly care about what the outside looked like. It was more like they were concerned with the inside of these boxes, more concerned with them than the outside.
Is there a shape on the inside? Is it flat? The bottom of the lid flat, or is it carved up?
No, it's
flat.
It's flat.
Now, in some cases, the lids have a lip that steps down.
Yep.
And the top of the box will have a corresponding lip. You know, where they kind of like when the lid fits on perfectly, it falls down inside.
God, it would make it impossible to open.
Yeah. But most of them are just flat.
Yeah.
And you can see on the bottom where it's been chipped away by people, obviously at some point came along, pried it open.
And this one's got a whole section of the front cut off, which is interesting. But again, polished after the cut. So you see it here. So rather than looking like that, it's been cut off like that.
I just love like the irregularity of it and the fact that it's so beautifully done.
Yeah.
Irregularly.
So there's
like
Kyle
scoops and
walking beneath one of them. That gives you an idea of scale, how giant these things are.
And you can see that the bottom of the box itself is just sort of like the bottom corner is just kind of cut in. Like, oh, that material's no good. Just cut it off.
Yeah.
You know, the thickness of the walls of these boxes is like over a foot, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they're incredibly thick. So, yeah, you can take material off the outside if it's imperfect.
So this is the one that they keep more or less clean. I mean, it's still not
the top
really
is
polished.
Pretty dusty.
Yeah.
You're right, Darren. We got it. We're bringing some paper towels and some Windex.
The reason there's a floor down here, right? They've built a floor and there's some stairs and you can come down here. And the reason why they let you go down and look at this one is because there's graffiti on it.
Because it fits this is the one that they base everything off.
Yeah, this is. I mean, they don't think it's graffiti. They think that this writing or these glyphs, this square of writing and glyphs here, is contemporary with the construction of the boxes itself.
When did they say this was made?
These would all be New Kingdom things. I'm not sure exactly. I should look.
The idea here is that they've carved all this stuff into the outside. Some priest prepared this box. It's got the cartouche carved in without a name written inside. And so it's like, we're going to prepare the box and then we're going to sell it, sell the use of the box to some noble person or wealthy person.
Get your name carved into the box.
Get your name carved into the cartouche and this box will be dedicated to you and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of the story that, maybe that's what was going on. But and was that by the people who built it or just by people who were, trying to make a racket?
This is an unfinished lid sitting in one of the alcoves, just sitting on the floor. So you can see this is not polished, but it's ready to go, right? It was in the process of being moved into the tunnels and put in place. It's corresponding boxes in a different tunnel. And you can see all these things, like people ask about what are these? These were probably carved out by the priests that inhabited this area, and these were like votive things that you would put a little plaque in there that had somebody's name on it. Candles sit in there. I don't know. This is a different style of lid. This might actually be dynastic.
Yeah, you can tell the work on this is just way different.
It's a different kind of stone too.
It looks like they're hitting it with a hammer and chisel.
Yeah. There's Kyle standing on one of the boxes. So that gives you this, You can see how much larger the outside of the box is to the interior space. There's the backside of that unfinished lid. It's got a scoop already taken out of it, and so they would have polished this to a mirror sheen like those other ones. Here's just one of the tunnels. So again, people have said, well, like when you're talking about how difficult it would be to move these boxes into these narrow tunnels, people are like, well, you put the box in before you cover it over. Well, no, they cut this directly out of the bedrock. So there is no covering it over after you put the boxes in. These tunnels were cut directly out of the bedrock of this area, and then you'd have to bring the boxes into the entrance and then drag them down these tunnels somehow. Like this. There's not a whole lot of room, as you can see.
For 1,000 guys with ropes.
So, the standard model story of like, well, you can move these giant blocks as long as you've got 1,000 dudes with ropes. Well, you can't get 1,000 dudes with ropes into this tunnel around this box.
And then they have to go around corners, and then they have to bring them out over the alcoves, which are set down in the floor, and then set the box down on the floor.
Right.
You can't even get the lid on the box in these tunnels.
Yeah. That's why the lid's not on there. Like the lid won't fit up there.
I had to bring them in separate.
We had Enigma Seeker on. I have to mention this. I don't want to derail this at all, but we had Enigma Seeker on, and he figures that Atlantis is in Egypt, right? And he figures it's Memphis. There's, I think, an island in Memphis. Memphis is right across from Saqqara. It's like right next to the Serapeum here. And I wonder if there's underground. And it's funny, I've been sort of trying to think about this theory of like, maybe the Serapeum was part of Atlantis, or maybe it was Atlantis. And I mentioned it on our last trip in Utah there, and to Denise, who was there with, for David Matheson's Myths of the Stars. And I mentioned it to somebody on our hike, and then she mentioned it to me. The first time I've ever heard anybody say Atlantis Serapeum. Like minutes after I mentioned my theory to this guy, she mentioned that she thinks she had some intuition that Atlantis was the Serapeum.
Huh. Well, it's interesting when we've gone through some of the older accounts of people finding this place and exploring it and digging it out. There are indications that there are miles and miles and miles and miles of tunnel. And obviously, when you go there now, you don't, there's a couple of places where the tunnel's blocked by a metal gate and you can't continue. So there may be, I don't know. I mean, some of the old explorers said that they came in here with 6 kilometers of rope and they ran out of rope before they could explore the full extent of the thing.
Yeah.
So
who knows?
I'm not saying that means it's Atlantis, but I'm just saying it is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super speculative theory, but I mean, if it does connect with underground Memphis or something, and it did flood, it was part of the catastrophe and 12,000 years ago or whatever. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. So to get past this box, you have to go onto the right side here and kind of squeeze past it. So this is after I've gone past it. Now, keep in mind, this box, I'm standing on a raised wooden floor. This is modern. And, you can notice that the floor is built around the box because you can't move this freaking box.
And I think that's probably like what Darren was saying. It's a dust factor. They're trying to keep
there's too much
dust down in there. So you build a nice wooden floor that you can keep clean.
Yeah. Yeah. So the floor is raised up off the original. This wooden walkway is raised up off the original floor. And the box is still taller than I am walking past it. There's Kyle up on top of it, looking down into
Breaking the law again.
Yes, lots of law breaking.
It's not a law.
Darren will be in the box smoking DMT when we're there.
Don't get us kicked out of Egypt forever, Darren.
Just say you don't know me.
I will hate you forever.
If
you get us permanently kicked out of Egypt, I'm going to hate you forever, Darren. So here's one more video. I know these don't go over well, but this is me walking up to this box in the hallway. This is just trying to give you kind of the scale of the thing. I walk up to it and I have to look up at the edge. And then go around the side here and sort of squeeze past it. actually much smoother than the other videos. And then I turn around and we get to watch Kyle try to climb up on this thing.
Here we go, folks.
There we go. So yeah, they're huge, and you can tell that this one is unfinished. It's sort of tilted. It's kind of, it's not square. But they were obviously in the process of moving this to the place that it needed to be, and its lid is around back down the tunnel and around the corner. And they were going to move them in, put them in place, and then finish them in place, which is like, okay.
Carve off all the rough edges, polish it up.
Yeah.
Square it up.
Use the flattening machine, whatever it is.
Yep. And they didn't finish the job because the box is still in the hallway. Still. After thousands of years, maybe, if we want to be speculative and wonder if this was antediluvian, then it's been sitting there for 10,000 years or more because no one can move it.
We should try and move it.
Yes.
Let's do a trip to some tunnels and just see how far some of these tunnels go somewhere. There's all these underground cities and tunnels.
Well, we will. I think we are going to get beneath the step pyramid. There's lots and lots of tunnels down there.
Yeah, there's, I think, 6 kilometers.
6 kilometers.
But I mean, like, break away from like nobody knows where we're going. Like,
you want to get lost and die. That's what you're talking about. I'm all in, Graham. Let's do it. We can glad.
Look, you don't need rope anymore. You can buy a gigantic spool of fishing line.
Yeah.
Miles and miles of it.
Fuck, the line broke.
Well, it's just so you can find your way back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's still not good if it breaks. This gets caught up on the corners.
You're just dragging the end. The end
no.
is like 5 feet behind you. You're going. Turn around. Oh, dang. That's what that tugging was about 2 hours ago.
So here I just want to show real quick the quality or lack thereof of the carvings on the side of that one box. That this is what they say this carving is contemporary with the making of the boxes, and you can just kind of see, like, look, the lines aren't straight. It's just not very well done. I mean, and these boxes are made of diorite, a very, very hard granite. So whoever was doing this just didn't have the tools to make fine work on this hard of a stone. All they were doing really was chipping away at the polish. And you can see the glyphs. I mean, the lines are crappy. They're not straight. They're not continuous. And the glyphs are just terrible. So obviously whoever was doing this was just having a really hard time with this very hard stone.
But they could just take the whole box out of the earth. But,
right, yeah,
they can't even carve on the box properly.
Right. Exactly. Some images of Kyle checking the flatness of the underside of the lid with a laser. It's not quite flat. There are discontinuities. But
very slight
discontinuities. But it is a mirror polish. You can see the reflection, back here. All right. Just some other places around the world, unfinished work that look similar. This is in Peru. This is Ollantaytambo. This is the temple. They call it the Temple of the Sun. Again, you notice the vertical scraping or scooping on these blocks, the big nubs or whatever they are. Lots of big scoops taken out of them. There's this interesting pattern here that a lot of speculation has gone into what this is all about. But it just look how similar this looks to the Osirian, although it's a little less square. And this is andesite, very hard stone. This stuff.
That block used to sit on its side, and they were like, "Yeah, I went to this place, and there were like these 3 giant pyramids. They kind of look like this." You know what I'm saying?
And it's weird how they've filled in the spaces between these stones with these long, slim spacers that have a nub at the bottom of each one.
Now I wonder if they go all the way through the wall, or are they just like fixing the joints between
I
stones?
don't know. But again,
for flattening,
look at these vertical tool marks. So again, we're in Peru here, folks. But yeah, Spacer's got a nub at the bottom, and it goes up and stops. Next one's got a nub, goes up. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it looks like they were using the same tool.
Yeah,
for sure.
Looks like the same tool. So that's Ollantaytambo. This is more of Ollantaytambo. So again, we're talking unfinished here. Someone was in the process of moving absolutely enormous megalithic blocks made out of very hard material with giant nubs on them, and they just never finished the job. The blocks are just laying around, some of them in the process of being moved to the site.
The nubs look like for rigging ropes on with a giant crane. I mean,
they do look like, that's what I'm saying. I believe they're construction based. Like, notice how on this set of walls, these ones down here that are basically finished have no nubs.
Yeah, I'm pretty firmly in the camp of the nubs were originally like a lifting tool or some maneuvering tool, or used to maneuver the stones, and then later they get, wiped off with the butter knife thing. Yes. When the job is done.
And notice how again around this portal, and you'll also notice in a lot of these places the windows or doors or portals or whatever they are have this interesting taper.
Beautiful taper.
They've got this taper that's very, it's interesting.
The other option
there's nubs all around this portal, and the blocks are much larger around it.
Yeah. The other option is that these nubs are used as a tool, but they're also aesthetic.
Yep.
In some places, because that just looks cool, like around that doorway.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't like it?
I mean, maybe it's for installing the door itself. I mean, I don't know.
They could have had things hung on them when they were fully, before they were heavily eroded. They could have actually included. They could have held things. I don't know.
I wonder if you see more nubs around the openings.
It's hard to imagine that they were used for holding things or that they're heavily eroded when you look at how clean the corners are on some of those, the doorways and stuff.
Yeah.
But, they look cool to me. I'm just saying
pretty easy way to lift a big rock with rigging.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, if there's two on the backside opposite of that and you just throw 4 ropes on it.
Now, in a lot of cases, they're offset. They're not in the center of the mass of the block, so people argue, well, that's not in the center. There's no way you could lift with that. And my argument is that, well, maybe when the stone was originally came from the quarry, it was bigger and it had more, and they weren't.
The nubs were basically centered.
They were basically centered across the center of mass.
But in the process of being placed and cut and shaped,
they get cut. One nub gets cut off because you got to put scaffold there or something else or whatever, and. So I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm at. But there are some anomalous nubs that don't really match.
And there are some nubs that are basically on the sides of mountains.
Yes.
And you can't pick anything up there.
Yeah. Or you're planning to cut the block out.
Yeah.
I don't know, but why would you just remove everything but a nub?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And again, notice.
That's another thing to consider about these
blocks
nubs, though.
Lying all around up here. So this is another, the walls were being finished, but this job is either got destroyed or it wasn't completed. And you can see that this is Johnson work here. This is modern reconstruction.
Yeah, another thing about the nubs real quick, though, is that you have to, in order to leave a nub, you have to remove all of the rest of the mass around it away from the nub.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of work. You can't just make one. It's
oh, that's a good point. It's an
incredible amount of work.
It's a bas relief in a way, really.
Yeah,
it's a high relief, meaning you remove everything else and leave those. Yeah, so it's a lot of work to do that.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. Is there any megalithic place that's finished? I mean, they all seem unfinished. Everything seems unfinished.
They may have been finished at some point, but they've been torn up, quarried.
I think a lot of these places are just way older than we've been told.
Yeah, yeah.
Way older.
Old as a motherfucker.
Here's another. Ben sent me these images. Again, we're looking at this is just an outcrop of bedrock, so it's like not even clear what this was supposed to be. Like, was this even part of a construction, or was it a quarry? But again, you've got these long regular scoops taken out, sort of blocks, scoops cut out, and then there's a set of them over here.
Somebody's like, let me borrow that tool for a couple of days. I found some bedrock,
Yeah, just, what are they doing here?
I would like to see the rest of the ground excavated to reveal more of it.
But there's stuff like this lying all over the place in Peru. Just craziness. Like somebody was just playing with the tool, the butter knife thing.
Yeah, this isn't really lying there. That's part of the ground.
It's part of the ground. That's right. So this is another unfinished construction, and you can see what like just the beautifulness of this work. This is also in Peru. This is Silistani. So this is part of the area where they've got those beautiful towers. They're round towers. The Chulpa towers. And this looks like the pillowiness is actually on the top of this.
Yeah, they haven't laid the next course yet.
They hadn't gotten the next course here yet, and they would have been flattening all this to fit the next blocks in. And again, you can see how all of these just kind of go around weird corners, sit in different areas. I mean, it's just amazing, this work, out of this very irregular kind of stone. These are a couple of pictures of Ben was driving, and here's just, another unfinished, this block laying at the side of the mountain. It probably was taken from a quarry way over here, brought across the bottom of the valley, and it was intended to go up this mountain, but it's just sitting here at the bottom of the valley. It never got taken all the way up. And the road goes around it. It's clearly a block there. Now we're at Easter Island, unfinished, Moai in the mountain, being in the process of being cut out.
Wow.
And never finished like the obelisk. Also, and what's really interesting is they had already been making it into a statue. Right? It's already got the face on it.
It's all part of the excavation. They start making it already. They probably don't finish it maybe, but they have it close, right? I mean, that's crazy.
Look at him.
Yeah, he's
huge.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Look to the left. They just cut them out of that. Like they just cut them out of the angle of the mountain there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. It's tilted again. Like it's tilted up, right? Like that obelisk. Here's some more. This one's really clear. Like you see the scooping. There's kind of indications that maybe that same kind of tool was being used here. And again, it's already got the face. And here's another one. Already has the face on it.
Look at the notch taken out above the nose there.
Yeah.
Like the tool needed that width.
Needed this working space to go over the nose.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. It looks like that's the. Oh, I wonder if that's it looks like there's a couple feet there. So that's really interesting. I mean, it reminds me of the spacing by the obelisk too, right? There's that minimum distance that they needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. The trenches around the obelisk are all very regular.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Wild.
Baalbek, more unfinished. Giant blocks in the quarry. These are probably much bigger. This is the famous one, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman or whatever. Now they've dug out around it and found that there's two more giant ones beneath it. It was sitting on top of them.
So they're cutting them out of the quarry and stacking them up.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like, yeah, we'll use these later.
Yeah. And these are the largest known cut blocks in the world. This one's estimated to be 12 to 1,600 tons. These are 16 to 1,800 tons, probably 2,000. I always think they estimate these low.
They need to, yeah.
Yeah. Probably 2,000.
Well, you got to get there's some standards. We can figure it out.
Yeah. That kind of gives you scale. Just look at those things.
Jeez.
It's unbelievably enormous. Like
the Moais look pretty big, pretty close to that size, though.
No.
Nope.
The finished Moai, even the biggest ones are, what are they, like 80, maybe 100 tons? This thing is
20 times that.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I just, who decided that they could move this?
Maybe they couldn't.
Well, maybe they couldn't. Yeah.
They stacked it on top of those other blocks. They already moved it at least once.
Right. That wasn't the one that was. Yeah, that's the one that's out already.
Yeah.
82 tons is the tallest moai erected.
But yeah, one of those moai in the quarry, you're right, Graham. One of those moai in the quarry.
The heaviest one is 86 tons.
86 tons. The moai, one of those moai in the quarry would have been the biggest moai ever if it had been fully excavated. Just like the obelisk, just like these blocks, just like a lot of the stuff I'm showing you. There's places in the quarry where it's just like the largest one of these things ever, like obelisk or moai or, trilithon block. And we're going to look at some stuff in China here at the end. But again, you can just see this one was in the process of being transported, and it's just dropped in the mountains.
Jesus.
And somebody came along and started using it.
They started cutting blocks out of it.
With what kind of tools?
I don't know. Probably this was probably recent. Romans probably did that.
But the point you were making about the obelisk, right? It's like they're not just going to say, "Oh, it's got a crack. Let's move on.
It.
Let's just go to this other part of the quarry and find good rock." They would have gone. You can see at the end of the block there where they were cutting nice square blocks out of the end. They could have done that with the.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't know the spiritual or the ritualistic significance of that. I mean, they might have already designated that spiritually as an obelisk, and it can't be used as something.
Yeah, but
maybe
later
one
people,
culture,
later
people that don't care. Yeah. The same people who stole all the granite off the pyramid, right? Like they don't care because they didn't build it. They just want a millstone.
Those people
right, for them, that would already be three-quarters the way done. Yeah.
So this is in China. This is the Yangshan Quarry in China. These would be the largest blocks ever excavated.
Those are the largest nubs, that's for sure.
Yeah, but they're not completely detached from the living stone, so they're not considered the largest blocks ever because they're still attached to the mountain. But the standard story on this is that nearby in some village, there's a monument. And the monument's in 3 parts. And the 3 parts of the monument has the same basic shapes as the 3 things here in this quarry. But the monument's like very small. And so the story is that these guys were told, like, making me some emperor's like, I want an enormous monument. Go cut me an enormous monument out of the quarry. And they start cutting these things, and then eventually they figure out, after doing all this work, that it's way too big to move, so they make a smaller one that's like 20 feet tall. But look at these things.
That just seems like we're not giving them enough credit.
Yeah.
You think they're going to start all that and then realize it's just big? I mean, come on.
I think the monument in the city is a testament to these shapes that they found in this quarry that they considered to be probably
built by the gods.
Look at this thing. That gives you scale of how big that freaking block is. It's ridiculous. Nobody thought they were going to move that. Look, it's still attached, but they've carved this. These go all the way through this thing, and yes, there's nubs on it, right? But it's still attached to the mountain. But it has this really interesting shape. And then this one too. This goes all the way through, and there's these strange plinths or platforms underneath here.
Or pillars,
but see how this goes all the way through this block. You can see through to the other side.
And how do they say they dug those out? Just with
I don't know. This is, I have no idea. It's China. It's hard to get information about it. All I could find was the standard story that the quarrymen went out here and they were going to make the biggest monument ever for the emperor, and they got all the way and they were like, we can't move these. Let's make a much smaller one and tell them and call it good. But yeah, it's gigantic. And this is looking through, so these are those same pillar things. It's just, what are these? What is this for?
Oh, so I thought they were still attached to the bottom, so they're not even attached to the bottom.
No, they are.
No, they're not attached to the bottom of the.
This. Yeah, no, yeah. No, they're yes. I don't know what they're for, but yeah, they cut this big rectangle out of this block, but left these things here. But the block is also completely detached from the wall behind it.
Man, it's massive.
Yeah. So again, is this an unfinished project? Incredibly ancient? Just like these things we see from all over the world. There's just blocks left in quarries. They've been sitting there forever. Statues left in quarries. Similar marks, scoops.
maybe all in the same fucking cataclysm, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it just seems like
It's a possibility for sure.
All in the same cataclysm. Work was being done all over the world on these enormous projects that
Using
look like
similar
technologies, gigantic stones, heterogeneous style of stonework, dry laid, very like resistant to cataclysmic events. And work was stopped all over the world at the same time.
Like they're getting a little too big for their britches. They're getting all of them. They're all getting to these biggest sizes ever, and then just cataclysm.
Confuse their tongue and scatter them throughout the earth.
Wow, that was great. Thanks, boys.
Yeah, you guys do a fantastic job putting that together. I really think you're kind of onto something there. And just to see it all together in one presentation really shows how important it is. And how obvious it is. I mean, it's really quite obvious. It's mind-blowing.
It does. It seems... It makes you want to think that it's all from a similar event, right? That similar people with similar building styles all over the world were working on these projects at the same time because they seemed to know something was about to happen. And it happened while they were working on the projects that they were working on because it was going to happen. And they weren't able to finish them. But they still survive in part to this day because they were building for that event. But they couldn't finish the job.
Yeah.
They
Well
got
done.
close though. Most
Just
of the
about.
boxes in the Serapeum are in place. Most of the Assyrian was completed.
Probably should have kept them boxes closed, but you know, just saying. Just saying. Well, thanks, boys. That was a fantastic presentation. Where can the guys track you down? Where can our listeners track you down?
Well, all the podcast related stuff is at brothersoftheserpent.com, and we can be found by searching that anywhere podcasts can be found. And that's it.
Right on.